and pepper. Nothing know the hotter than a big bassa. We too love aroma. That is the we culture. Waiting like a vulture. We like gossip and slander. But not the true picture. We know who from the east. Don't want Ronnie. That's young robber. I want my mother. Hey. But we don't know when we get in we pension. We don't know when we turn 67. We don't know if common entrance gun done. We don't know if Nero can still run. But we all see the video. He ain't listen to me, and he picked the wrong lawyer. So it's GUYS and pepper. When you and me are GUYS and pepper. For you and Potter, GUYS and pepper. Hear what she tell you, GUYS and pepper. You can't run forever, GUYS and pepper. Hey, boy, what a thing! Oh Lord, mercy. Hey, yes. GUYS and pepper. Last year on the radio, a certain moderator gets one from the river. He wouldn't answer questions about Jehovah, so they reverse the scripture. For paper Peter, about CPC, about VOP, how to freelance, what happens in France. But he don't know nothing about the Almighty. He don't know if undecided gun call he. He don't know if they sell CBC. He don't know if he back to Ronnie, but he's just smarter than you thought. He gonna wait on the right spot, then climb back on top, and it's GUYS and pepper. Yeah, gas up Peter. GUYS and pepper. The man would call ya. GUYS and pepper. Who put the pepper in the pepper leaf? Come if the man, come if the hour. GUYS and pepper.
Good night, good night, good night, good night.
Boy, what a thing. Oh
Lord. Good night, good night, good night. The scripture says righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach, which really means it brings disgrace to any nation. Sin brings disgrace to any nation. And the big question that we're asking ourselves is, what is really happening in Barbados? What is happening in this beautiful country? That's the question that we are asking tonight. What is going on with our country? I know everybody all into the gossip and all of that, but there's a serious, very, very serious side to what is happening. And I want us to have a serious discussion tonight. Yes, we have our little comedic elements. Yes, we do. But we want to have a serious, mature conversation tonight. What does this mean for Barbados? What is going on in Barbados? Yeah. So let me just greet everybody, and you have to share up the live. You've got to like up the live. Judy Jilks, Matthew Brown, good night. Mildred Ben, folks, Mildred and Judy and Matthew, I'm hoping that you will call in tonight. This is our Barbados, This is not a joke, It's not funny. Yes, there's some comedic elements to it. I have to agree because, I'm here talking about all these different cartoon characters. So sometimes you take a serious thing and sometimes you just have to laugh, right? But it is serious. I don't want us to miss the seriousness of it. Yes, Bajan boy, you're going to call in tonight. CG says, I read the book Things Fall Apart. Now I'm watching it in real time. Next, it will be Doomsday. I read that before it came on and I was laughing. I know you all are so funny, but I still want to remind you to remember that this is a serious thing. This is our country. You might say, I'm not interested in politics. Well, you better be interested. Politics is our life. It is how we live our life. It is how we are governed. And what does this mean for the way we are governed in Barbados right now? Nigel Carrington, good night. Jackie Aline, good night. Marcia Miller, good night. Vernon Garnes, how are you? Mavis Lashley, good night. Flo Joe Maloney, good night. Michael Harewood, good night. Queen B, good night. Teroni, good night. Oh, wow. Callie B, good night, sir. Alfred Benjamin, good night. Beverly Prescott, good night. Marcia, good night. M. Hoyt, good night. Oh, wow. Sonny Onion, good night. I know who that is. Monica Ince, good night. Sharon Innes, good night. Oh my goodness, Bim the Beautiful. That's really what this is all about, Barbados. And as I said, if you're just joining me, yes, we are. There are some comedic elements there. You know how we like to have fun as well, but there is a very serious side to what has occurred. Okay, and we are talking about the reshuffling of the cabinet and the clear removal of Senator Crystal Haynes, right? We're going to talk about that. And what does that mean to us as citizens? What is it telling us about the kind of governance that we have in Barbados? Do we still have a democracy? All of these things. Hi, good night. Nikki Tay, did I say hi to Nikki Tay yet? Oh, wow. Yes. Hi, Easy D. How are you tonight? Zaire Campbell, Erskine Watson, right? I think I have everybody by now. Thelma, yeah, what is Thelma? Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Folks. Before we go any further, we're going to go right into our national anthem. Because, you know, that is the song, I say the song that we line up under, okay? That is the call to action. So are we ready? Let's stand at attention to the national anthem. yes, we love BIM. Yes, we love BIM. It's all about Barbados. That's why we gather each night. And there's some who say, why do they play the national anthem every night? It reminds us of why we come together. It is a reminder of why are we coming together? We are coming together because our love for Barbados. That's what brings us together. And that's why we're concerned tonight. Our concern tonight is really what is going on with the governance of Barbados. It seems to us that there's a political circus that is happening right now. This is this is the estimates, and we're going into the budget. That's supposed to be something quite sober, isn't it? Right? That's supposed to be something that is so quite a period of time that is so quite sober. But we saw how it started. It started with just the chairman out of place. We saw how they were treating the leader of the opposition, and everything was just crazy with the estimates. And then we came to this. Now I want us to think about it. Now just bear with me. Okay, so we're gonna have a little fun. Just 1 minute, 1 or 2 minutes of little fun before I have my first guest on tonight. But anybody can tell me, who can tell me, if we're thinking cartoons, who is Miss Piggy in this whole political circus here? Who is Miss Piggy? All right, I'm just putting that out there. I'm asking, and who is Barbie? Who is Miss Piggy and who is Barbie? Listen, we're all doing cartoon and children, okay? And who is Miss Piggy? And this is all metaphors, eh? So in case we are simile, this person to us, in our opinion, is like this cartoon character, okay? That's all we're saying. All right. So you hold that right there. So okay, so that is all right. Anybody remember Miss Piggy? What are the characteristics of Miss Piggy? Who remembers Miss Piggy? What are the characteristics of Miss Piggy? If you remember it, what the characteristics of Miss Piggy, write that in the comment section. All right. Okay. You have different names. Well, where you can decide who is Miss Piggy. All right. But you write in the comment section. In the comment section, the characteristics of Miss Piggy. Now, tonight, guys, we have a full house. We have between 9 to 10 guests, and that will be on the show tonight. It's going to be charged and packed. And then at 9 o'clock, as usual, here we are. We are ready for you to call in. This is your Barbados, right? So we need you to call in, those in the diaspora. So we have Jehan Satar. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He's a young man that we met at the Roadside Parliament on Sunday. Roadside Parliament on Sunday, right there in Old Town, Surfside Restaurant. On the outside of Surfside Restaurant, we had our Roadside Parliament, and I met this young man that is fearless. I love his spirit. I love what he's doing. And I said to him, I wanted to come on the show. And then right after, you're going to have Don Leacock. And, Don has been, doing some amazing work. He might be responsible for somebody not being there. So he's going to come on. Then there's Senator Ryan Walters going to come on. Nigel Newton is coming on. Rose, the lovely Rose Corbin is coming on. Shaquani Hunt is coming on. Maxine McLean is coming on. Yes, and we're going to have an amazing time. And also we have Dr. Ferdinand Nichols is on. Dr. Ferdinand Nichols will be coming on as well. And Mr. Lewis from Joe's River, serious man. He'll be coming on as well. All right, so we have a packed house, really packed house. All right. All righty. Okay, so let me just welcome right now to the Marcia Week Show for the first time, Mr. Jehan Satur. Good evening, Jehan.
Hello there.
Yes, yes, yes. Wonderful, wonderful. Welcome to the Marcia Week Show.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, we had such an amazing time right at that roadside parliament on Sunday. And when I heard
Mhm.
you speak with such passion, and you had all of your information, your facts, you did all of that research, I said to myself, you know what, Jehan has to come on the show. And then something started to happen. So Jehan, I'm going to just let you speak to the people and tell the people exactly what is happening in your community.
So where I'm at is Brighton Beach, and basically the long and short of the story is that there's a property next to my home that was purchased in, I think it was late 2024. I think that is when the sale closed, and then immediately after that, there were rumors that the person who bought it wasn't the person who bought it, and that it was actually acquired by a particular character. And I've been calling this character Developer X. And essentially, that story is only relevant because it was only through the channel of gossip in the neighborhood that we even knew that there would be construction of a high rise. So that in itself is the first strike, because there was no notice to begin construction. There was no sign. Usually you see a big sign that says important notice, and it has the plans and it tells you what's going to be there. None of that was erected, and we had no chance whatsoever to contest the development. And so eventually rumors died down and whatnot, and nothing was said at all. It was complete silence until I think it was December 3rd, when a team of people just showed up and cut down trees and removed them from the property. And so there were
So hold a minute,
10
Jehan.
trees or more that
So
were
we are
there for
clear.
at least 70
So we are
years.
clear,
And,
Jehan.
talking
It's
about
in
Chestnut trees
Brighton.
and coconut trees and pride of Barbados trees.
Are we talking about Brighton here?
I'm sorry?
Are we talking about Brighton community? We just want to establish that what the area.
Yeah, repeat the question. There's a little bit of interference happening here.
Yes, somehow, yeah. I was asking if it's Brighton.
Yes, Brighton, St. Michael,
Right.
on the
Yeah.
beach.
Okay, good.
Right.
Okay, continue, please.
So yeah, so all of those trees that were there for 70 years or more were removed, and it was a habitat for wildlife. We know that that is supposed to be a violation of the Environmental Protection and Management Act, because the previous owner was informed when he tried to cut down those trees that he can only trim them a little bit. And things went on. Then December 29th, a construction team just showed up with no warning whatsoever and demolished those buildings. And before that, again, no notice was officially given to the neighborhood. There were no signs erected announcing the development. There were no screens erected to block the dust. And you've seen the footage of the dust going into the sea and into our homes. And several people had respiratory issues because of it, and allergic reactions. And so, that's all still going on to this day. I mean, even myself up to today, I was coughing just being outside in my yard trying to do basic things. So, the existing fence that they have there now wasn't erected until after the demolition was completed. So they'd already dug the foundation and such until that point. Now, what I would like to ask is, has there been an environmental impact study conducted? Because if in fact there was one, then there should be no issue with sharing it with the public. So besides the trees being cut down They dug up a sea turtle nest, which is near the high water mark. It's completely destroyed. They dug that up and covered it over with crushed stone, which, as far as I know, is a violation of the Environmental Protection and Management Act. And it requires, as you would know, that an environmental impact assessment should be done prior to determine the effects on it. And things like pollution control should be handled. So lots of things are going on. So they then began to excavate the foundation on the site, and they dug up a whole lot of seawater that basically, because the distance from the high water mark to the shore is such a short distance, obviously that's what's going to happen. So in this neighborhood, even during rough seas and even outside of hurricane season, you have the waves that bash up against the wall and they come down that gap leading to the sea, and then that seawater gets absorbed back into the sand, into a flow of water which is underneath the sand. So currently there is still a swimming pool of water on this construction site. And so, like I said on Sunday, why that is not a good
I
thing
think we
is
have that
because
picture. We have that picture of the little pool of water. We're trying to get
Mhm.
some stuff up as you speak. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so I'll continue to speak. So as I asked before, why is that not a well? There were 6 suck wells on that property which were not emptied prior to the excavation, and there were Chinese laborers that were living in those houses there up to a week or so before the demolition. So the excavator was then used to dig up those wells, and we had called the nation and stuff like that. And this particular developer was actually brazen enough to say that the septic tanks were taken out. Those were his words. You can check that in the nation. But we know that that did not occur. And first of all, the original buildings were erected in 1938. So can you tell me where they would get septic tanks from in 1938? That is a pertinent question. So what we are saying is that that water is potentially contaminated. And like I said on Sunday, I was in my yard minding my own business, and one of the workers was about 5 feet in front of me, and he said to another, "Big man, that is bare water in there." So
What?
that is
So,
confirmation.
so you heard him saying that it's jobby water,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the
So he was saying that
jobby
to
water
another.
was where? Where was this jobby water?
In the water that they dug up in the when they were digging the foundation. So
Oh
this
my
water is
goodness!
continuously coming from a stream underneath the foundation. Essentially, is what I'm saying. It replenishes, and as the tide rises and lowers, you see that swimming pool of water rising and
Oh my
lowering,
God!
right? So, um, we've done everything to reach out to Coastal Zone Management Unit and the Environmental Protection Department, etc. And nobody seems to really want to touch the issue. And so our major question is, why not? If nothing is going on, and if these things are being done within the law, then why can't someone just come and say, "Oh, there's nothing to worry about. Here's the environmental impact study. Here's the proof that the water isn't contaminated," etc., etc. And it seems to be difficult to just get someone on the phone to talk about it. So, they continued then on January 27th. They came down our driveway and they destroyed both public property and private property in front of the house on the beach. And nobody gave them any permission to dig. They just showed up and decided that they would start digging because they needed to solve a problem so that they could get their excavator down on the beach. So at that time, I got annoyed and somebody called the nation and I called brass tacks and spoke about it. And what they were actually doing was they dug up that space at the top of the driveway, which is public beach access, and they put down marl and stone. And as far as I know, digging on the beach is a violation, and so is operating
Correct.
heavy machinery. So basically they have that, and they actually had the picture of them digging it in the nation. So I'm trying to stick to the things that are factual, because this is a very sensitive issue and you have to be careful the things that you say, right?
Mm-hmm.
So um on that same day of the 27th, they then installed the pipes, which basically signaled the intent to pump potentially contaminated water into this soakaway that they had dug on the beach side. And
So
that's questionable.
hold a minute, because let's be clear here. So this is the water that the workman said was jobby water that they're planning to pump where? Where do they want to pump this jobby water?
Well, see, that's the sensitive part. So let me say what they did. So on the 27th, when they dug up and put the marl and stone down at the top of the driveway, that was so that they could dig a trench on the beach, and so that trucks could come down to dump marl and cover over. So what they've done is they put this huge pipe in a trench right in front of the fence on the beach side. Is that part clear?
Okay. So
Right.
that water
And
is going somewhere in that direction of the beach, but you're not sure.
right. So the water wasn't going anywhere yet, because on that day I called brass tacks, and when I spoke about it on brass tacks, the very next day they showed up, hauled off the excavator, and construction went at a standstill. And so the only thing that has been going on is that they've come and disassembled a lookout that they had and relocated it to a different position, and they've put up the orange warning guard and things like that. And then today they show up with a pump and connected a hose to that large pipe, which is under the sand on the beach side.
But you don't know what they're doing with that pump.
Well, you could both assume, and you could also use logic and say that since it is going in the sand where that trench has been dug, that it is connected to that. And I saw them testing the pump. So they're pumping that water. And the only place that it could be going is through that pipe onto the beach. Rather than say onto the beach, I should say under the sand on the beach.
So they have decided to go to, okay, it appears. So let's say
Mhm.
that, okay, it appears that
Yes, it
they've
appears that
decided
way.
to go underneath the sand. And I mean, just from any deduction, I mean, of that,
Mhm.
I mean, that's going to go somewhere, and it might just end up we're bathing in it. I am saying that, not Jayan is saying that. I am just deducing that that's a possibility, that we could just be bathing in
Mhm.
that contaminated water. It's a possibility. And that's why Jayan is asking for the environmental impact assessment.
Mhm.
Make that report public. He's talking about the
Mhm.
sea turtles that they've disturbed a nest there. They've chopped down trees that the previous owner, under when it was town and country planning, was told you can
Mhm.
only shave the tree, you can't chop down trees, but this developer is now able to chop down trees. The people there in Brighton, St. Michael, weren't even aware that this kind of development was happening there. They are disfiguring in my opinion, looking at this, the entire beach, and making causing a nuisance for those who are the residents who are living there. Well, tonight, Jehan, this is just the beginning, because I'm going to come up to you with my camera, and we're going to have a talk right there if it's possible. We'll talk off air, and you let me know. And I tell you, loyal opposition, this is another spot that we need to go, and we need to do something at this particular spot. Okay, so you
Oh,
listen out.
and Marcia, something
Mm-hmm.
else to add there is, which is also of public concern, is that, as we know, the desalination plant is right across the street. And second to that, the construction workers told us when they were digging up and putting marl down that they were going to erect a guard hut at the top of the driveway, and that only us who live down through here would be given access. So are they saying that they intend to restrict public access to the beach?
Wow. This is
because I
this
can.
serious. This is serious.
Yeah.
This is a
Mm.
serious thing. What I'm going to do, only because of time, because but I we're going to talk off air, and I want to again commend you for what you're doing. You're taking a risk, just like Senator or wonderful Senator Crystal name, not Drake's. Uh, uh Haynes.
Haynes, Crystal
Yes, it
Haynes.
was
Yes.
Crystal Haynes. And just before you go, because I see Don Leacock is right there, ready to come in. I want to ask you just before you go, did you hear Senator Crystal Haynes in the Senate speaking about these kinds of development, especially what's happening there at Old Town Civic Center? Did you hear that speech?
Yes, I heard a small snippet of the clip when she was talking about the Civic Center, and I
Mhm.
said to myself that is not going to end well for her because we know how things are. And um, I told you on when we spoke earlier that I know Crystal since school days. She was only a year above me, so I believe that she is a person of integrity, and I find it very interesting that what has transpired. I'll keep it at that.
Yeah. Well, we well, in our we're doing a little cartoon thing, because sometimes you have to make jokes out of difficult things, and difficult scenarios. And somebody said, they knew that Miss Piggy was going to get her. Whoever is Miss Piggy, we are not saying on the show who is Miss Piggy, but they're saying they think Miss Piggy was going to get this Barbie here. All right. But
Mhm.
anyway, thank you so much for coming, Jehan. And I'm hoping that we can connect again for Friday. Okay.
Okay. Thanks for having me. I'll be back.
Yes, Jehan. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Wow. That is something else. Did you all hear that? What is happening right throughout Barbados. It's not just at Whole Town, it's not just Joe's River, it's not just at Gibbs Gully, which we're going to be there on the 9th of March. Everybody write that down. We can't miss these things. We can always talk about them. Don, let me welcome Don. Good night, Don.
Hi, good night. How you doing, Marcia?
I'm doing good. I see you, and I'm laughing at the picture that you showed me. Every time I remember the picture, I laugh. But
Which picture is that?
I can't say it. You
Oh,
would
you
have to
can't say it.
you would
No,
have to put
you.
it up. I'll send it to Dave. But
Oh,
but Don, first of all, let me just welcome you to the Marcia Week show. And
mhm.
we're a few minutes out of your time, past
No
your
worries.
time. But I thought that, what Jehan, did you hear what Jehan had to present this evening?
I caught the back end of it.
Yeah.
I
But
caught the back end of it. So
it's
I
a
didn't
whole
get to fully. It was about dirty water. I didn't get to hear all of what he was saying, to be honest.
Yeah. What is
Mm-hmm.
it is appearing that this developer that's building there in Brighton, it
Mm-hmm.
appears that there is jobby water being pushed, sewage water being pushed to the sea.
Mm-hmm.
And he has had to call brass tacks,
Mm-hmm.
and so he's coming on the show, and I'm thinking we need to go down there. We need to go, because there's just a lot of things that's happening in this new planning and development
Mm-hmm.
ministry that is headed by our prime minister. So I don't know if she's
Mm-hmm.
aware of all of these just the breaking, well, to us, what seemed to be the breaking of the rules, not
Mm-hmm.
knowing, we don't know if these are now the new rules.
Well,
That's
that's the
the other
thing.
thing.
She's had unchecked despotic power for so long. She forgot there were rules.
Well, that's what it seems like to me, as well. Now,
Mm-hmm.
but you're on here tonight to talk about this cabinet reshuffle.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to let you jump right in and to give your take on it. You all remember Don was one of those that represented you in in the US, in Washington, read the cybercrime bill, which,
Mhm.
by the way, if they had the cybercrime bill, both you and I would be in jail right now.
No, don't say that. I don't ever say that. We would have had the best lawyers in Barbados, and we would be sitting down right here fine. But
Okay,
we would
wonderful.
be experiencing some issues. We wouldn't be able
Yes.
to have the show right now, to be honest.
Yes, yes, yes.
Mhm.
So let's jump right into this cabinet reshuffle and the
Mhm.
firing. We're calling it the firing of Senator Haynes. So this is a crew
Mhm.
here. We're seeing in this picture who I call Miss Piggy. We are seeing Ursula, right? We're seeing Guy Smiley, right? And we're seeing what's the name of the cat? There's a cat that's lazy and does nothing and just sleeps around. It's not Sylvester. Dave, what's the name of that cat? That's all of them in this picture, right?
Mhm.
So, but go right ahead. Go right ahead, Dan.
Oh man, where do we start? So, I mean, a cabinet shuffle in essence, most of the time, means that there's trouble in paradise. It means that for whatever reason, things aren't working. The Barbados Labour Party prides itself on being better than the Democratic Labour Party. That's the only thing that's their only really claim to fame. The only thing
Mm,
they can say to the Bajan people at any given point in time is, oh, you don't want to go back to those DLP people you don't want to go back to them. But they have to realize that so much time has passed now. It's been since 2018 that they've gotten in. They've borrowed more money than any government in history. They've taxed us harder than any government in history. And what is there really to show for it at the end of the day? We can clearly see here that Mia Motley is losing her absolute group of power. A lot of her people are starting to dissent. She's having arguments in fighting. And at the end of the day, it's actually taken the BLP itself to make all of these unforced errors. I really think that the opposition here in Barbados need to go a lot harder. Not you, Marcia. You're the loyal opposition. You can't go any
we are the loyal opposition.
you can't go any harder than you currently do. But think about if we had Errol Barrow or Tom Adams or one of those titans in industry looking at Mia Motley's mistakes that she's making right now, publicly admitting to paying criminals with taxpayer money. What would Errol Barrow have said to that? What would Tom
Mm,
Adams have said to that? What would the greatest politicians in Barbados history have said to that? By the time they were done tearing into Mia's government, she would be begging to resign. You know what I mean? So I really think the opposition needs to do a lot more. They could do a lot more. They need to come a lot stronger because these unforced errors from the BLP can really start to show cracks in their entire system.
mhm, mhm. Well,
Yeah, we can.
someone here is saying it was a government reshuffle, and that's not unusual. This often happens, and what often
Mhm.
happens, it gives government the opportunity to get rid of dead wood. What do you say to this?
Well, I agree with the statement in principle. Deadwood in this case being yes, very deadwood. It was, there are a lot of negative reasons why this cabinet shuffle had to happen. This wasn't a strategic shuffle. This wasn't something that was really just about political prowess. They did this out of desperation. They did this because they had to. They did this because, well, let's talk about the different factors of the shuffle. Let's talk about who do you want to talk about? Because three people were fired. Who do you want to talk about first?
Let's talk about Marsha Cattle.
Marcia Cattle. Okay, so I would say of the firings, two out of the three of them, in my opinion, were just vindictive, despotic behavior on Mia's part, and then Corey Lane, he had to be fired. He had to be fired. So Marcia Cattle,
You know too much about this correlate thing, Oh my lord. Anyway, go ahead.
yeah. So at the end of the day, Marcia Cattle, in her official statement, says that her views and the government's views don't align, and at that point,
Hello, are we hearing him, or is it me? Okay, so we having a little issue here. With
extremely
Yeah, go ahead.
politicians. They're
Mhm.
yes men. We'll get to Jonathan Reed later. He's the chief of staff of Mia. Suddenly, now he's a senator and a minister. Like, how are you just going about giving your friends these jobs? So at the end of the day, Mia needs to surround herself with extremely weak people, which I find that questionable, because she herself is so strong. Whether you like her or hate her, you have to acknowledge that she is, she's very articulate, she is very smart, she is very intelligent. So at the end of the day, why wouldn't you surround yourself with other smart, intelligent, articulate people? She likes to keep the weakest people in the party elevated, so that then she looks like she's a shining light above everybody else. So Marsha Cattle, I don't really have anything bad to say about Marsha Cattle at all. You and I discussed her earlier today. She was the one that was in a very contentious ministry. Obviously, the battle that you and I and the rest of the loyal opposition have been fighting against the cybercrimes bill. The cybercrimes bill came straight from her ministry itself. And as you and I discussed earlier today, it could have very well been passed if it was a direct Mia yes woman running that ministry.
Yes.
The fact that Marsha Cattle, she didn't put up the most opposition, obviously, because she has to be a team player for the BLP, but she did, suggest that it go to joint select committee and all of these things that stall the process, and that's the reason it isn't a law right now. So I wouldn't have anything negative to say about her. I actually applaud her for taking the step of resigning from a government that she doesn't really believe in. Obviously, she can't air her facts out, because at the end of the day, she's a member of the Barbados Labour Party. The Barbados Labour Party have kept her employed for the last couple of years, so she can't say anything bad about them. But for her to resign from a government ministry, not to take up another post in the cabinet, it shows that there really, really was a lot of trouble in paradise for her.
Yeah, yeah. And the fact that, I mean, this announcement of the reshuffling did not occur until after Marsha Cattle, tendered her resignation and made it public. Then here comes, this is all about trying to make it seem like, okay, well, we are doing this, it's a regular thing we're doing here. There's nothing unusual that's going on. In the middle of the estimates, you're going to be reshuffling when she was supposed to be on the floor in the parliament, presenting our ministry yesterday. So what are we? It's not scheduled. It's not scheduled at all.
No, definitely not. It's Jonathan Reed, I believe, that is taking over this ministry. As I said, he's the chief of staff of the prime minister. So he orders the catering. He puts the napkins into fancy arrangements when she's having meetings with other world leaders. And now suddenly he's a minister. She's just really keeping the people that are closest to her, that would really, if she said, jump off this bridge, how far down do you want me to go, me and Motley? Those are the sort of people that she is keeping around her. She's not going to have anybody with an opinion is bad for business. Look at Senator Dr. Crystal Haynes. Intelligent young lady. And then she gave her opinion one time, literally just one time, and she's gone. Like, what kind of, like, that's
Don, you're hilarious. Don
said
literally just one time. One time she gave her opinion. It's true. And the one time she stuck up, and she was very nice about it. She was very gracious about it. And you heard what the prime minister said. She said that she's the one, they asked her and she said yes. So you fire her. She's fired. We could pretty it up. The woman was fired.
Yeah, definitely. We could go into her next after Marsha Cattle. Senator Dr. Crystal Haynes, I liked her as a senator. It wasn't ever anything too contentious. You could tell she's a genuinely good person. What I really liked too as well, it's like she didn't come into politics looking for a job. She was already self-sufficient. She's a doctor. She has her own medical clinic, I believe. She just came into this for the benefit of the people. There are a lot of senators who are like, oh, I really need this $18,000 a year. I'm doing this for the money. You know what I mean? She wasn't like that. She came into this. She didn't need it. She does not need solid politics to be a successful Bajan. But at the same time, she decided to do it because she would be able to represent the people of Barbados. And I think that that's a lot more of the core values we need in politicians. We need people who aren't going into this for a 9-to-5 salary. We need people that have, a life and stuff outside of politics. And politics is just something that they genuinely want to help people with doing. And in this case, I believe that that is her. I watched her entire 7-minute speech. I believe it was in the Senate. She
Yes.
went to the University of the West Indies. She did almost a full history course on the Whole Town Civic Center. She brought a lot of really good facts and articles. It's a national heritage site. It's a national archaeological site. She made mention to the fact that the Barbados government itself has certain obligations when dealing with a national heritage site and a national archaeological site, which the government itself would be breaking right now. She even said, I know everybody would be wondering who it was. She said during the speech, somebody actually told her not to come to Senate that day so that she
Yeah.
wouldn't speak about these things. And what did she say? Her conscience wouldn't allow her to do that. So at the end of the day, I really think that conscience over corporations should rule the land. And all I have is kudos for former Senator Dr. Crystal Haynes.
So how about your very good your Don, you make me laugh. How about the minister of crime prevention, sir?
Okay, Corey Lane. Not can't call him honorable. Corey Lane. So at the end of the day, I don't know how many people saw my story post, but I had a run-in with him in 2022, shortly after they were elected. I'm not gonna go back into it on the show. You already had a whole show about that, but he's just genuinely not a good person. You have to be careful what you say here on the internet. You don't want,
But in your opinion, based on this is your opinion, that you are stating. Okay.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, Mia Motley threw him under the bus. She literally said in her 3-minute cabinet reshuffle speech that Corey Lane is being relieved of his duties so that this government is insulated from any charges brought against him. He says that he is completely innocent and that he has his right to do so. So at the end of the day, Mia Motley's completely throwing him to the wolves. She's saying, please go ahead and take him. He has charges, go ahead and take him. And at the end of the day, it looks really bad for her in the international community. She already has an MP on trial for rape, Neil Rowe, accused of rape already. Everybody's speculating about what the charges on Corey Lane are going to be. I could tell you what they are. I don't want to do that here on the show today.
No, not on the show, yeah.
Let the newspaper say it, and then I can say it as soon as the newspaper said it. But it's really a bad look to have 2 MPs, be coming up on charges. Like, this is your team, Mia Motley. This is the team you chose.
And there is an ambassador that was put in place, a cultural ambassador, who, of course, we know is innocent until proven guilty. But he too was charged for rape. It's a reality.
Yes, a singer that we all know and probably quite a few of us love as well. The government was paying him $8,000 a month, and
to be cultural ambassador.
At the end of the day, it's very concerning that so many people affiliated to this Barbados Labour Party government are being charged with this specific type of crime, the most heinous type of crime. So it's very, very concerning, I would say.
But before you go, because I love a good laugh. I'm going to move. So I see Senator Ryan is here, but I'm going to put him back. Just Dave, there's a picture, but I don't want Senator Ryan on here with that picture. So I'm gonna move him. This is just and you know what? It's been on thing, and we're not called. We don't know. We're not saying who is in the picture. People can look and they can figure who they think is in the picture, right? Right, Don?
I can't. You gonna show me the picture? I'm not sure.
Okay, Dave, look on their WhatsApp. There's a picture, and that picture is just hilarious. Every time if I'm in the kitchen and I remember, I'm laughing. Dave, can you put that up quickly before Senator Ryan comes? But meanwhile, Dave is getting it ready.
Yeah, put it up. I just want to say in closing, because I know Senator Ryan Walsh is going to come on, and I hope tear into these men as I encourage the opposition to do a little bit more. It really looks like if Chad Blackman is being poised to being the next leader of the country. I don't know what people think about that. That could be good. That could be bad. But at the end of the day, I'm sure that's going to have Santia Bradshaw extremely sour. She's been probably hoping. Yeah.
We don't know. Nobody's saying, Dave, one quick second again. This is these young people
That's
are
it. You
something else.
can leave it. You can leave it up there. The newspaper posted that picture.
Okay, it was in the newspaper. Okay, good.
As a publicly available picture.
Thank you. So this we're not saying who this is, but every time I see this thing, I am dying with laughter. But it was in the newspaper, and Don sent it to me. And Don, I tell you, I
posted that on my social media. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was in the newspaper. But you know, Don is going to find it and keep it. Okay. All right. Okay. All right, Don. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me as always, Marcia, and keep fighting. Keep up the good work.
Yes, thanks. And you can hang around. You can please hang around. Feel free to do that. Let me just bring Mr. Senator Ryan Walters. And we're a little late, but I'm giving you back the time, sir. Yes, good night. Now, you were on this show about I would say it could be about 2 weeks ago or a week and a half. And you said something. You said, I really am hoping Senator Haynes is going to be fine. Why did you say that?
Good night to everyone. Good night to Dawn, my brother. Marcia, good night to you and your viewers. Good to be here again. Since I'm breaking some records this year with visits to the show. But glad to be here to share. When we spoke last, we raised the concern that something like this would have happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I because I know a lot of people don't listen to all the debates in Parliament, and I know quite well that sometimes people kind of choose who they want to listen to, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And I highlighted the fact that Reverend Dr. John Rogers, he made a plea. You remember that? He made a plea. I said he made a plea to do not penalize the Senator Haynes. And it is because if you were in the room, it is okay to watch that presentation on YouTube streaming. But the chills ran through the room from the time she got up and made her first 2 sentences. And Dawn alluded to some of that tonight. One of her early sentences was that she was advised not to even show up to participate based on how she felt or what she was going to say. And she thought that she couldn't live with herself if she did that. The room, it was just chilled. It was a different environment altogether. She had everybody's attention. She had puzzling faces on the side of the government, all looking around, wondering. You can see the eyes going. Because we sat on the other side, so you can see the eyes. You can see the eyes going, and you can see them bending over and looking at each other. In some instances, you know, it was really, to be there is totally different than listening online. So we felt it, and coming after her, Senator Rogers then, realizing the impact that she had and the stance that she took, publicly asked for her not to be punished.
Right there, Senator Walters, because we were looking for this clip and we couldn't find it after you left the show 2 weeks ago. We now have it. Dave, can you play a little of that, please? I hope Dave can play it so that that the viewers can hear this reverend. And I could see he was trying to protect this young lady as a father. You know, he knew what was coming, you know, Don, and he was trying to protect her. But alas, it didn't work. Let's hear Senator Rogers, who is a reverend. Go right ahead.
And so I want to make an appeal, if I may, to those who have the power or any influence. Please do not penalize her for her honesty. Please do not penalize her for her conscience. This chamber is meant to do just what she did today.
Wow. You know, this is really, really sad to see that. You know, it's really sad, Senator, to see that this is a place of debate. The Senate is a place of debate. It is a place where you were going to have varying opinions, etc. And I thought she was very gracious in her comments. But you know, let's move along the conversation. You're a senator, an opposition senator. What does this say to you about the governance of this country? What does it say to you?
First of all, I want to pick up, Marcia, on something that Dawn said, because Dawn said a lot of what I would have said, to be honest. And he said that this was the first time that Senator Haynes would have, made a comment contrary to the government's position. But I can't remember all the instances, but there are situations where government senators have in the past had a varying view or have not outright supported something, a legislation that has been before the House, in both houses. So it is not unique that that a senator or even an MP would sometimes have a different view of what the government might want at the time. It doesn't mean that they don't support the government or they don't support the leadership. It means that in this instance, there's something that is telling them that they want to go in this direction. And in the case of Senator Haynes, you can see that she has done the research, she has made a position and backed it up and supported it with facts and sound reasoning, right? And it was done genuinely. So for us on the other side, rather independent, and I speak for myself, but from what you could have felt and heard in the chamber after she spoke, was that we all understood that position, right? We all understood that position. I've been in the Senate for a year, and over that year, she has supported the government in everything that they have done. And she's been very articulate in supporting the government. In this one instance, she has not. And this is as a result. It speaks to when you talk about governance, it really, you expect a reshuffle of the cabinet to be a result of some strategic decision to carry the government forward, to move the country forward, not a knee-jerk reaction to things that are happening within your cabinet or within your party. So what you anticipate is that a leader will come and say, hey, we are on this course and we want to go in another direction, or we want to enhance this, or somebody here has not been doing such a good job and we want to maybe make a change to see if we can get an improvement in one area, etc. And that is generally a strategic move to put wrong things right. What you've seen here yesterday is a move to fix things that have gone wrong, not necessarily to make a strategic decision, right? So it is not based on a strategy to carry the country forward. And let's use Corey Lane's ministry, ministry of what is it called? I guess
crime prevention. He's a minister,
right? And crime prevention is a holistic issue. Crime prevention is a holistic issue, and they created a ministry and they're pompous and they say that this ministry will bring down crime, will reduce all the shootings and all these things. We saw it got worse. We saw then that the minister was pretty much used as a scapegoat, because the day before he was in the police station, he was in the parliament, and his boss was saying that he was doing things that he shouldn't have been doing, and he had to be stopped, right? If you saw those images from parliament that Monday, if you saw the look on his face the next day, I mean, how could you be a part of your team and somebody coming in to parliament, literally being examined and just outwardly saying, hey, we came in, we saw he was doing some wrong things, and we stopped it. And then he's still defending that he didn't do anything wrong, but he's already been thrown under the bus.
To the dogs, yeah.
But in the case of the Ministry of Crime Prevention, it is now being transferred to another ministry under Kurt Humphrey. And when I watched over the first few months of what the kind of work that was being done in this ministry, it is not a standalone ministry. It is a ministry that can be pieced through a series of ministries. Education, youth, especially the bulk of it, in my opinion, should be under youth affairs. Right?
Yes.
There's no reason for it to be, because you're talking about swimming programs, sports, you're talking about development programs that all sit right now under youth, all budgeted for, all have programs already that are established that probably just need to be beefed up. There's no need for you to have a new minister, have a new mandate, have a whole separate $8 or $9 million of taxpayers' money when you could have approached this on a holistic position in the first place, rather than giving somebody a job who has now failed at the job, right? So, and if you see, they have a good example of them using the initiative of having one of their flagship programs spread across ministries. And you would not believe, if you search the estimates document,
yes,
and you search for regathering, you will see regathering across various ministries, budgeted across various ministries.
yes,
Because in this instance, they don't want to tell you that they're spending $12 million on regathering. So they're separated it to make it difficult for you. But in a genuine case where they have crime prevention, which is a social issue, which is a long-term issue in terms of dealing with youth development, which has implications in terms of our education system, which has implications as it relates to sport development and sport engagement, entertainment, even culture even. You see, there's so much different elements, but they didn't take this approach. They took the political approach to say, we're going to fix this crime issue. We're going to put a minister of crime. We're going to do peace program. They did everything politically, not looking now at how the repercussions of it, and it is now a dismal failure. And my question to the government is, are you going to pull that peace program? There's no place for the peace program anymore. It is clear that it is a social issue, it is a culture issue, it is the issue of education, sports, youth development, and it does not even need to sit under one ministry, and it can be dispersed throughout various ministries that would have that wide social net that could actually give us the benefits in the long term. So that's just one example of the political decisions that have been made and the apparent failure of this government to execute on its mandate.
Yes. You know, I like what you said there about that Ministry of Crime Prevention, how it could be spread across, various ministries, because I know that there were some of the families that were linked to some of what Kirk Humphrey was doing with the One Family program, One Family, I think it's called, that particular program. But let me just, Don, is there anything that you want to comment on quickly before we go back to Senator? Actually, I know what I want to ask you, please. And he's right here, say it to his face. You are saying that you don't think that the opposition is fighting hard enough.
I mean, it's a hard decision, right? I've been in the fire already. Ryan has been in the fire already. It's very hard to keep shooting constantly all the time, especially in such a despotic environment that we live in right now. At the end of the day, the more you criticize, the more you're ostracized. So it's easy for me, who is not as in the fire currently as Ryan is, to say, yeah, keep fighting harder, harder, harder. But at the end of the day, I do acknowledge that it is quite the position to put yourself in. We have one party with 100% of the power in the country. They could, do anything to your business. They could try to jeopardize the ways you make money financially. And at the end of the day, it's never worth that if they try to get, your money involved and then your family involved and everything. So at the end of the day, you do need to be very careful. That's the Owen Arthur clip saying Mia Motley is a despot. I agree with that. And at the end of the day, you still do need to be cognizant of the fact that she is a despot and she might do what despots do, which is incredibly sabotage you. So as easy as it is for me to say fire a little bit harder, I can acknowledge that they are currently firing. And in the perfect world, you know, we would all be firing a little bit harder, but we're all just a little bit trying to make sure that we don't lose our shirt at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What are
well,
your
it is.
thoughts on that? Go
Oh,
ahead, Senator.
it is not an unusual comment.
Mhm.
It really is not an unusual comment. I get the comment quite often,
Mhm.
but I think in Don's case, it is a genuine concern.
Hmm.
But we have been firing, and I'm glad that he admitted that we have been firing. What has happened though is that, in my opinion, and when somebody asks me a question similar to this, I ask them, are they paying attention? Yes, we can get into spaces, but a lot of people are not even paying attention. So, for example, someone challenged me on social media recently, and they
Today,
rattled off.
Barbados.
Pardon me.
I'm sorry. That's a
Oh,
mistake of ours.
sorry.
Go right ahead,
So,
sir.
so they challenged me. I made a post on my social media, and I got a voice note almost immediately. And they challenged me about speaking out on agriculture, speaking out on food security, and all that. And all I had to do, Marcia, was go to the Nation News on the same morning and send the clip and send the story from the leader of the opposition talking about food security.
Mm.
And the person was like, "Wow, I didn't know that." You know, so I mean, it's like we are there. There's more that could be done. Our numbers and our advocacy must increase, but we have been doing a very consistent job, and it has been bearing fruit. You saw the work on the energy issue with the gas prices. Where we had to put pressure on them for them to bring down the gas prices after 15 months, and this was lost on Bajans what they were doing. You saw the advocacy from the leader of the opposition as it relates to the fishing industry and the lack of support across the sector, and even asking for additional support, which, by the way, was granted. Additional 2 or 3 months was granted in December. And that was because the leader of the opposition was very, very adamant and relentless in
Hmm.
going after the needs of that industry. So there are success stories coming out of the last 6, 7 months, especially after all the turmoil in the party, and we continue to fight for that. You're hearing now we are unearthing all of the happenings in Hope. It started with the leader of the opposition last debate for the budget response, and you've seen I take up the housing ministry as a shadow spokesperson, and we've unearthed a lot of things, and we're calling for Hope to be closed down. Right, so we are trying our best. We are putting our best foot forward, and we are stepping in the right direction. Don, I think you can see intensification of our lobbying and of our advocacy for the people of Barbados, and that is going to come slowly but surely. But what you can be guaranteed is that it's going to become also with quality and not just pure political talk. But if you listen carefully, well, we might not be telling the government exactly what to do. If you listen carefully, we are actually telling you what we plan to do when we assume office.
Yeah. Well, you know what? One of the things I just want to say this because, Don, when it happens, rarely these kinds of moments happen. I just want to say to you, Senator, that I really love the way that you responded to Don. You know what the part of it that you said. I think Don is genuinely concerned. I like that. Honestly, I do. Because and I don't think that you realize what it means, but for you, somebody listening, because I'm waiting to see what you're going to say now, because he's, and for you to say that and the way you've broken it down and you've answered, but especially that part, because a lot of people don't like criticisms, right? They don't
Yes.
like to take criticism. But the last thing, Don, are you satisfied with that
It wasn't.
answer?
I didn't say it as a criticism, Marcia. It's a motivation. I would say that would be
Yeah.
the word
Yeah.
I would
Okay.
more use, and that's
Motivation.
exactly how Ryan took it. Like is
Yes.
and I'm
Yes.
not even saying that he needs motivating, or that Ralph Thorne needs motivating. It's just that for so long, previously before 2018, Barbados had this hot political battling back and forth But since 2018, when it's been 30 Love, we've kind of lost that. So all I'm saying is I just want to kind of encourage it to come back, you know?
Yes.
And
Yes.
as Ryan pointed out, they are intensifying the efforts again. And
Yes.
every day we get closer to election. So
Yes.
every day you guys testify, yeah.
But let me ask Ryan, Ryan, just finally, is there anything else we talked a lot about Senator Haynes. Is there anything else in the reshuffling that you want to speak on before you go?
Yeah, one last thing about Senator Haynes, or the removal of Senator Haynes as an option in the Senate. It's very interesting, and you know, you hear a lot of public discourse over the last 24 hours about the removal and the person that is supposed to replace her, etc. But if we take our minds back to 2022 after the election, the government made a move to they wanted to incorporate an 18-year-old in the Senate. So remember, there was one vacant space and it wasn't filled, and they was trying to change the legislation to accommodate an 18-year-old person. They failed at that. And then Senator Gregory Nichols was asked to sit in the Senate.
Okay.
Right? So in other words, he was not a first pick. He was asked to sit in because the Prime Minister at the time did not get her way at the time.
Right.
And he was interviewed by the media, and this is what Gregory said. Senator Nichols, sorry. And I'm quoting the Barbados Today story of March 20th, 2022. I look forward to participating in my first assignment in the appropriations bill. This will be my 5th one, so I have an appreciation for what is required. The circumstances regarding Mr. Koth-Dawala are regrettable, but I am ready to fill the breach, and I trust that I will do credit to the Prime Minister for her display of confidence in choosing me.
Wow.
So in my opinion, if you wanted to, he's been there 5 times. If you wanted to replace somebody, the first pick cannot be Senator Haynes. There are other options for replacement, right? So you can clearly see that at the end of the day, there's something behind the shift, and it's not that she was asked to make room. She was asked to make room, yes, because that she stood up for what she believed in and what drove her to make that speech. And as she said, she could not live with her conscience if she did not make those statements in the Senate a few weeks ago. So I'm just saying that there are options that the Prime Minister had at her disposal. And I'm just saying that Gregory Nichols is a clear person that was not the first choice, given his experience and being in the Senate. And clearly she was making way for younger persons by trying to change the legislation to accommodate 18-year-old. So there's no reason now why some person like Senator Nichols couldn't bow out and allow for another youthful person to take up the mantle and become a minister. The second thing is that there's this great need for the leader of the country of Barbados, Mayor Motley, to pass the lower house and her MPs to assign ministries to. So you have 29 persons in the lower house.
Don't trust
and
any of
you
them.
now have 3 ministers in the Senate. So what does that tell you?
Repeat what you just said. So you're saying she's bypassing the people in the lower house?
Yes, she
think
has
it's 4
28 persons
actually,
now,
Ryan.
and she's bringing in people and making them ministers. So she has 4 ministers. Sorry, she has Senator Blackman, Senator Monroe Knight, Senator Cummins, and now the incoming senator. So, and then there are 29 persons in the lower house. Now there are now 27 who are eligible because 2 of them have disqualified themselves. But you have a cadre of persons who the Prime Minister, then you have two additional ones who have opted out. So we have, I think that's Sonia Brown, and now we have Marsha Caddo saying we want no part of it. So the numbers are getting slimmer every day. So leader of opposition across the floor down to 29. There are 2 persons that are in legal battles down to that brings it down to 26. Right? Yeah, 26. And now you have 2 persons who are saying, I do not want to be part of the cabinet because you know what? Our principles do not align. So the prime minister still has a cadre of persons, over 20 persons that can be accommodated in the cabinet, but she's consistently bringing persons into the Senate and making them senators. And there's a growing problem with that as well, because in my opinion, some of these persons have got to be careful how you word this, what I've seen is not really a representation of citizens. I have seen a very policy-driven focus with not looking at the full implications of the impact of policies onto people. You've seen it in renewable energy, where there's no focus on the consumer, there's a focus on investment and the Barbados Light and Power. So so that person doesn't have to go and knock on doors and answer questions about cost of living, etc., because they're not an MP aspiring. You have Senator Monroe Knight, who clearly wants to sit in the lower house, and she's the candidate for Christchurch South.
Yes.
And she's the Minister of Culture, who sat quietly by during this debate on the Whole Town Civic Center. Right? So you clearly see now why she sat quietly, because she wants to keep her pick. So she doesn't want to support her Ministry of Culture and Heritage. She could, if she stood up, she would have to speak in support of the ministry that she holds, not in support of the government. And she remains silent. You have Senator Chad Blackman, who is a trailblazer, I would say, in the party. He's been one of the faces that has been foisted on Barbados. He's been placed comfortably in a seat. There has been no nomination. There has been no runoff. There has been no election for a candidate in that constituency. There's just a news clip, a press conference, or some sort of media release that says, I am passing the baton on to Chad Blackman.
Wow.
Right? So then now you have this incumbent senator, can't remember his name, but
Jonathan Reed.
Jonathan Reed, the chief of staff.
Jonathan Reed. You have him now. And in a few months from now, you can probably see him replacing somebody else or positioned strategically for a purpose of the prime minister. Right? So I would not put in my head that he doesn't have any political aspirations at all. I wouldn't. Right? I heard some conversation that he's more technical and all that, but it is left to be seen. But it's not a personal attack on anybody. It is just to show that really and truly the resources or the human resources that are in the lower house are not at the quality that the prime minister believes that they should be at.
Ah, I got you, because that's
that she now has to reach outside to bring support into the Senate.
Wow.
So that she can get the quality support that she needs.
That she needs. Wow. And the other thing is, I seen Mr. Nigel Newton there waiting for him to turn on his camera. But the other thing, Senator and Don, is that they were both replaced by men. And I remember when Trisha Watson was replaced by a man, I mean, the women's group, the women's organizations, they were calling brass tacks and so on. And here you have it. The both of them were replaced by men. Not that I have a problem with it, but I'm just saying that you're not hearing the women aren't, and especially for Senator Haynes, I'm thinking she's a female and she spoke up. And basically, I mean, they kind of just like use a thing and just, took her voice from her as a female, and you're not hearing the women, you're not hearing the women saying, we stand with our sister, Dr. Crystal Haynes. We're not hearing the women saying anything. That I find to be very, very strange, Senator.
Marcy, I could say one thing and then I can run real quick.
Yes.
I would encourage all of the people, Reverend Rogers. I know this is quite forward, But I would encourage them that if they really thought and believed um, transparency of the Senate as much as they do, that they should resign. Crystal Haynes should not have been kicked out of the Senate, and they still in the Senate if what they were saying, if what they were backing her up was actually true. If
Don, I
that
want you to say that again. You come to the front of the class. I want you to say that again, right here on the screen. Say it again.
everybody that agreed that what Crystal Haynes was saying was correct. I can't say everybody. I remember Andrew Malalu agreed. I remember, I think it was Bobby Morris agreed. I remember, obviously, for sure, Dr. Rogers agreed. If all of y'all agree with what she was saying and she was fired for saying it, you should resign as well. That's all I'm saying. So y'all have a good night, Marcia.
Yes.
Really appreciate being on the show. Thank you.
Hi, Don.
All right.
Thank you so much, Don. Thank you. And I'm seeing Mr. Nigel Newton on. Good night, sir.
Well, good night to you, Marcia, and the entire People's Opposition.
It's good to have you here tonight. We have Senator who's going to probably stay a few more minutes, and I know he has to rush off. He has a lot going on. But we just want to welcome you, sir. And I don't know if you heard the conversation we were having where you have Senator Haynes, who the Prime Minister said she was asked to resign, and she accepted, which means she was fired. She was removed from her job. And we were saying that we're not hearing the women's groups speaking about how this woman, is using her voice. Historically, women had to fight for their voice to be able to speak, freedom of speech, freedom of expression. And while the Prime Minister can travel the world, Nigel, and she can speak and share and point her finger at world leaders and all these things, here's this young lady got up and so graciously presented something on behalf of the people of Barbados, and she was penalized for it. What do you say to women in Barbados, Mr. Newton?
Well, I think it is extremely unfortunate that Senator Dr. Crystal Haynes suffered such a humiliation. And I think if the women in Barbados are really serious about their politics and what is happening in the country, then I think they should have risen up really and object to the treatment of Senator Dr. Crystal Haynes, because it is a clear violation of her freedom of conscience. She and we all as human beings have the right of freedom of conscience. And Dr. Crystal Haynes was within her right to express her views on something that is so critical and so important to us Barbadians. So for the women to remain silent on this issue is really a tragedy.
Yes. Senator, I know that you're getting ready to go, because I know the type of schedule that you have. But Don made a statement, and I didn't discuss it with him before, but I thought of the same thing today. And I said to myself, well, if they were so convicted about it when they stood up and they spoke, I think Charles Morris, Senator Charles Morris, I think he also said something as well. I think Crystal Cummins, who is a leader of the Senate, or leader of business, Lisa Cummins. Lisa Cummins. As a female, she was sitting there and she saw and heard. I think that they should all take a stand. What do you think, Senator Walters? I know you're in the Senate as well, but what are your thoughts about that before you go?
It is not going to happen, Marcia. It is not.
Why?
Well, everybody wants to sit at the table. This is not about. This is This comes down to a personal decision. This comes down to principles, to conscience, to morals, and they will not do it. They will line up behind their leader, right? Because they will fear victimization. To step down is to resign from your position. And who will do that? I mean, we have to be
Because
realistic.
you can't have any dissent. You can't have dissent.
They will not do it. As I said before, there are instances in the past where persons on the government side would have a varying view or would have not fully supported legislation that have been brought to either chamber, and they would have been able to express those views. Even as recently as I think it's yesterday or the day before, you heard in the well some of the MPs cross-examining their comrade about road repairs and all that. And some of them were very aggressive as relates to demanding that the roads in their constituencies get done, etc. So it is one of those things where it is very unfortunate that what has happened to Senator Haynes. As I said, and as Dawn said, and I support that, the one time that she stepped off outside the crease, she was called out, right? And it's unfortunate, but you do not expect anybody on the government side to support her publicly in terms of standing behind her to the extent that they step down or that they be absent themselves from the Senate for a sitting or two or whatever.
Yes.
What you would see is outpouring of love and support on social media, nice captions and conversation about we support you, Crystal, job well done. It's been a long journey, all the nice fancy things that would commend Crystal, but you would not see anything going that would offend the Prime Minister. But in closing, Marcia, the one last thing that I would want to highlight here is that the Prime Minister has used the cabinet reshuffle to hide the inefficiencies in specific ministries or ministers. And again, it speaks to the kind of bold leadership, the leadership of acceptance that we have made a mistake or we have to make an adjustment because of non-performance. And you see that with the education ministry, where I don't have to go through the myriad of issues that we had in the Ministry of Education, but you have heard repeated calls from across many sectors in the country that Keir McConney should resign or should be moved or should be asked to resign. And it was not done, right? But you see now it being happening in a cabinet reshuffle. So there's no real acceptance from the Prime Minister that there's an issue that needs to be fixed in terms of the governance in that ministry.
Right.
And you've seen it across in other instances of reshuffling as well. And it says something to the character of the Prime Minister. You also hear as well that the Prime Minister doesn't like to deliver bad news. And we have examples of that, right? Normally, bad news is not delivered by the Prime Minister. And we have her now saying that the budget will be delivered by Minister Strawn. So now we're hoping that there's no bad news to be delivered. You know, so it is, if you really look below the surface, there are other underlying things that are happening in terms of the governance, in terms of our leadership, in terms of the fact that the acknowledgement that we are not perfect is really not coming out, and that we have things to correct in this country. And
Yes.
if the government is hiding from that reality, we can expect that this government will continue to be mediocre in its performance.
Yes.
If I feel that my boss is going to protect me when I do not do well, to the extent that I will hold my position until the next election or until it is appropriate for me to be shifted in another place of comfort, then I'm not motivated to do any better. I'm not motivated to perform on behalf of the people of the country. So that is what you would see. You are going to see a continuous lack of performance across all ministries. You now see the Ministry of Education being split in two. Now we're in the estimates debate. We have Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education with the largest budgets, and we do not get to investigate and ask questions to the Ministry of Education.
Yes, those two they're not in the well. Yeah.
And now you hear that there's no Ministry of Education, Innovation and Science and Technology anymore. There are two ministries. That is what my interpretation is. One of education transformation and the other of training and tertiary education. So it is very confusing to the public,
Confusing.
right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of um, divisions and areas within the Ministry of Education do not fall into either of those categories,
Yes.
right? But I'm saying that persons are continue to be awarded or rewarded a safe place or a different place and not called out for their non-performance. And that is going to have big repercussions for the performance of the country across all ministries, because everybody's going to sit, they do whatever. They know that the Prime Minister doesn't want to look bad. She doesn't have the fortitude to come and accept that her ministers are not performing and that she can fix it or replace them. And then replacing them is not putting them in another ministry. Replacing them is saying, hey, you are not fit for purpose. Let us give another person a shot at this.
Yes. Yes. Well, thank you so much, Senator Walters, and we are going to be rooting for you in the Senate. We have to do that. Loyal opposition is not a lot of them, and they're trying. Senator Worrell as well, and they're there and they're trying. They're doing their very best. And I want to commend you, and we're going to support you. Okay. Thank you so
Thank you
much
very much.
for stopping by. All right.
Okay, bye. Have a good night. All right.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, Nigel, we continue this conversation. Now there is some reshuffling as it relates to education, right? And
Yeah.
where they have Minister Kay Connie is now doing I think it's economic affairs. That's what she's that's where they've put her. What are your thoughts about that and the way the ministries seem to be broken down into two? What are your general thoughts about that?
Well, when I first heard that that was the case, I was really puzzled and wondered what really is going on, because it indicates that, one, there is definitely a crisis in governance in Barbados, and two, that there appears to be no clear um, vision of the future of Barbados, or a vision for the ministry and its role in the development of Barbados. So I think that it's confusing, to say the least. It is confusing.
Mm-hmm. I see Miss Rose Corbin is here as well. She's presently in the studio. Her camera is off, but let me just welcome her to the Marcia Week show. Welcome, Mrs. Corbin. Good to see you tonight.
Good
Thank
night,
you.
Mrs. Collins.
Pardon
Yes.
me. Thank you both. Thanks for the welcome.
Yes, ma'am. And we are here talking about this cabinet reshuffle, and we are talking about education. And so this is a very strong area for you, an area of deep concern, and you're one of those who felt that I think at some point that something needed to be done with Kay McConney. It's now happening. What are your thoughts about this reshuffling as it relates to the area of education?
Thank you, Marcia. I did indicate to you when we were told that we were going to have the panelists in tonight to discuss these matters that I would reserve my comments to education. But briefly, before I do, what I would have observed over yesterday when when the news came of the reshuffling,
Mm-hmm.
two scenarios came to mind that I would have grown up with, and I believe, and I greet you, loyal sons and daughters all, good evening, firm craftsmen of her faith. And Marcia, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but I believe that Nigel would be. I grew up hearing my grandmother saying that when a crapo, and my people out there will know what's a crapo. You know what's a crapo, Marcia?
No.
A crapo is a big frog.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So get the picture. I grew up hearing my grandmother saying, oh, he or she behaves like a crapo. And how does the crapo behave when cornered? According to my grandmother and the fable here, the local fable, when cornered, a crapo, pardon the vernacular, I'm not being disgusting, but I'm just recalling what I've been told. A crapo raises his leg and pee in your eye.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
Nigel? And
Indeed.
that is
Yes.
what
Yes.
I
Yes.
saw today, yesterday. I'm cornered, I'm cornered, I'm going to pee in your eye. And what I saw also yesterday was the mashing up of the cricket game, right, Nigel? And again, in the local scenario, we
Hmm.
always hear that game done. If the
Yeah.
game isn't going your way, if cricket isn't going your way, and
You pull
you
up the
own
stump.
the ball, and you own the bat, and you own the stumps, you
Yes.
rip them up, you take them up, game done. And
Yes.
if you could, you would take the pitch with you. And if you start another game, if you start another game,
Hmm.
you would choose those persons
Yeah.
who played the game your way, who
Hmm.
allowed you to score the runs. And that is what we have been seeing, but it has been made more visible over the last 24 hours, 48 hours, based with this reshuffling. And it was interesting, Marcia, hearing the Honorable Senator Walters speaking. He was looking at my notes here, and I had written big, rewarding Kim McConney for or lack of or for non-performance, for mashing up the Ministry of Education. And I know persons will be coming for me, but I have been in education since 1974. So I would have come under several ministers of education as well as chief education officer. And I must, and I've been doing my research, whenever there seems to be a BLP government, education gets mashed up. Nothing seems to work in education. And we could look when the now Prime Minister was Minister of Education, the failed edutech.
Yes.
We can look also now when she became Prime Minister, her choice as Minister of Education in 2018. We had Sanchia Bradshaw, whom I was told was petulant, reluctant to take up that ministry. Needless to say, I speak empathetically that around that time or soon thereafter, she was unwell. But we were told that she was a reluctant minister of education. And then we brought in Kim McConney. And as you know, I always lauded Miss McConney for what I knew about her and my interaction and engagement with her when she was the manager of the youth entrepreneurial scheme. Yes. And many persons told me that I was too soft, but I gave time. And then you would hear me thereafter when we continue to get all the poor performance, the non-performance, um, the how the education was being treated. You then heard me saying, look, Prime Minister retire her. She should resign. Now we are seeing here, Marcia, Nigel, and listeners, that she's being rewarded again. Remember when she was brought in as senator, she was given a ministry.
Yeah.
And apparently she was not good or effective, not let me say good, as effective as she should have been. And my frustration is that the Ministry of Education continues to be a dumping ground.
Yes.
So
Because
you
of
dump,
what they're doing. Yeah.
yes, so you dump her there because then you can blame the chief, you can teachers will be blamed. So dump in the Ministry of Education, and we know what has or has not happened under the good lady's tenure as
Yeah.
Minister of Education. Now we are seeing, Marcia, and Senator Walters spoke of it. The Ministry of Education is no longer called the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training. Counter the Bajan expression, lo and behold, unbeknownst to us, and I keep track of these things, the Prime Minister, in announcing the reshuffle, drop it like it hot on us, too hot for us to catch or note what was going on. We learned that it is now called the Ministry of Educational Transformation. What in help me fill in the blank spaces? What does that mean?
Yeah. But Rose, let me just because we are running behind, and I'm going to go extra half hour tonight, so everybody going to get in what they have to say. But
Yes,
you
please.
hold the thought right there, and let me just bring Shakwani in, and because we had a little issue there at the top of the show, so let me bring her in, but don't lose your point, because you're gonna get a chance to continue, Mrs. Corbin. I just want to bring her in, and I know she has some
Yes,
thoughts
please.
on education, and then I go back to you. Right, Shakwani. Good to
Yes,
have.
good evening, everyone.
Yes, good to see you.
Right.
Yes, I'm
Good night.
sure.
Good night.
Yes, I'm sure you are listening to this conversation,
Yes.
and I have up on the screen Mrs. Tweedy. And Mrs. Tweedy is actually from the cartoon Chicken Run. And I don't know if anybody know who Mrs. Tweedy is and who is Mrs. Tweedy, and you try to figure out who is this minister is Mrs. Tweedy. But but let's go to, what are your thoughts on this education, the reshuffling in the education, Ministry of Education? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think it was long awaiting for her to be removed, mainly because we were constantly seeing a lot of failing on her part. And I'm not just talking about personal failing, but statements like school is ready, we're on track to open, first day of school, schools are not ready, parents have to go back and pick up children, environmental problems, projects still going on, open wells, which we know are very, very dangerous. So over and over, we have seen situations where it seemed like the minister at that time was not looking over or on top of her ministry. And at that, it allowed the children who were going to school to be in a position where they were out of school for long periods of time. Remember last semester, Grantley Adams, their students were home for almost a whole semester. And they're now catching back up. So even though it seems like it was necessary to remove her, she was not doing her job. And by not doing her job, she has impacted a whole generation that had to go to school under her. And we will now continue to see the fallout as we are struggling with a high loss of literacy in Barbados, where we have a a big number of children who are not able to read. And I am going to, when you think about children doing online learning,
Yeah.
that is really impacting them and how they're learning to read. We have children who log on to online learning, turn off the cameras, and go outside. Teachers are not able to keep up with them. So when you have situations where children have to be at home for long periods of time doing online learning, it's not conducive for them. Something as simple as scheduling repairs to be for the school could have been done earlier instead of running into when school is starting. But I see you put a video up.
Yeah. No, it's gonna play without the audio.
Oh.
Just continue for another minute, and then I'm gonna go back to Rose and then to Nigel.
Okay, all right, no problem. On my part, I'm not seeing the video. Oh, I'm now seeing the video.
Mm-hmm. Yes, just continue speaking unless you are you done?
No, I'm not done. And
Yeah.
I found that under her leadership, we had a huge number of children fighting. We had a huge number of people coming into the school without getting appropriate access, and then they're going back to tightening security. What does that really mean? How did they even get into the school in the first place? I believe that if something is your ministry, you need to be on top of things like that, especially when you have children at risk. When you put children in a position to be potentially harmed, you are putting them at risk. There's so many things where she misstepped, and I feel like she should have been removed every sense.
Mm-hmm.
I do not know if the new minister what he will have in plan, but I hope he's able to get his app, the app that she left back for him to fix together very quickly, because or not we will have children graduating, leaving school, being impacted with what she left.
Yes. Thank you for that. And it's good to hear a young person's perspective. And I really made sure that we had them on here tonight. But, Rose, back to what you were saying, a while ago of not knowing what is the ministry. I mean, Shakwani is saying the new minister of education. But is there really a minister of education? Just following from what you were saying.
From where I am, I don't think that we no longer have a ministry of education. And I would like the Prime Minister and the replacement Minister Blackman to explain to us. I think we need to know education for me is the gem in the crown. It is the gem, it's the prized gem. I told my husband it's like what the Taj Mahal is to India. And we have been treating it so badly. We cannot be so negligent and ad hoc with education. What do we mean by educational transformation? Is this just another handle for all the narrative and the rhetoric associated with education reform that has failed? Or is this just a stopgap for people to ride out their time, keep people comfortable so that they can get their little pension, as they're doing with Kim McConney, shuffling her all around? And we are putting people to hold down some places so we can rally out until when elections are called due 8 years, within 8 years from 2018, so that persons can get their pension. But don't mess with my education. Don't mess with the heartbeat of the nation. Don't mess with it. Please explain to me, if the other sections of Barbados don't want the explanation, someone explain to me, who would have dedicated 51 years of my life in retirement and still doing it. What do you mean by the Ministry of Educational Transformation? And honestly, I thought that MP Sandra husbands would have been handed over the entire ministry as she was brought over from foreign affairs to take up I ain't too sure what ministry within the Ministry of Education, what portfolio within the Ministry of Education, the former, may I say, Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training. I think she was more responsible for the the vocational training. And I was anticipating when I heard that Kim McConney was relieved and are asked to resign or be removed fully from any ministry. I thought that Sandra Husbands would have been given the ministerial position for the Ministry of Education. Now, again, they have just given her a fancy title, Training and Tertiary Education. What's that? Identify for me the entities that exist within training and tertiary education. How many are there? What is the reach? What is her mandate? I do not like the messing with education. You're not messing with technology. You're messing with minds.
Yes.
You're messing with the future. You're messing with the present because our children within the school system are not waiting for a future down there. Education is enabling their present to transition into their future. I'm not satisfied with the handling of education. The young gentleman, pardon me, Honorable Chad Blackman, he seems to have a very impressive background as a diplomat and ambassador.
Before you go there, Mrs. Corbin, let me just ask Nigel, you know, you're listening about, you know, all of what we're talking about tonight. You yourself, at some point, you know, you've been in the teaching profession. When you hear this minister of education transformation, and then you have Sandra Husbands, who is now in charge of tertiary something. Does it say to you that there is a ministry of education? Do you what I myself am confused.
Well, like Mrs. Corbin and yourself and everyone else, I am confused because I really cannot understand. I don't understand what really is happening in the Ministry of Education, because you see, for me, the Ministry of Education has a very significant role to play in the social construction and nation building in any nation. And therefore, to be confused and to be misguided and to be just playing political games with such an important ministry is not good for the development of the nation, or in this case, for the development of Barbados. And it says to me that clearly the government does not have a clearly defined philosophy of education. The government does not have a vision of the future of Barbados, and they do not understand the significance and the role of education in social construction and nation building. For example, right now, we are going through a very difficult time in terms of crime and violence in Barbados and in the school system as well.
Yes.
Okay, and one would think that knowing the significance of education and the role that it can play in character development and nation building, one would have thought that the government would be more careful and more circumspect in what it is doing to the Ministry of Education. Okay, so and to have to divide the ministry like that, it is a recipe for confusion and destruction.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Nigel. I tell you, we are all here tonight. We're all here tonight. I'm just going to bring Miss Maxine McLean in. And as much as this topic of education is something that I would like us to, I'm hoping that we can get back to. I want to kind of look at some of the other things that have occurred, between yesterday and today. The reshuffling, and then the prime minister is making an announcement that she would not be the person doing the budget speech. And I want to welcome former Senator Maxine McLean, and I think it would be you'll be the right person to ask this question. What is that saying to the country? The prime minister is saying, I'm not going to be giving I won't do the budget speech. We hardly saw her. I think somebody glimpsed her outside the parliament, but I didn't see her sitting. I might be wrong. Sitting inside, when the estimates. I didn't see her in there. And now we're being told she's not going to give the budget speech. As a former senator, what is that saying to the people of Barbados, in your opinion? Good night, Miss McLean. You're muted. You're muted,
Yeah.
Miss McLean. Yes.
Yeah, good night. Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Yes. Well, it just says to me that one more time, the Minister of Finance, because the Prime Minister, in presenting a budget speech, will be presenting her responsibility, her capacity as Minister of Finance, that she has decided that maybe the job is too big for her in terms of presenting it. And the reason I say that is that on no occasion, from my observation, since the Prime Minister has been Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, has she generally tackled tough economic issues in terms of explaining them and so on. If I remember correctly, there might have been a time during her tenure as Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, that we did not have a budget. If I am wrong, somebody can correct me.
Yes, that's correct.
We did not have a budget. Last year, the Prime Minister was in for a major shock. I don't believe neither the Prime Minister nor her parliamentary colleagues expected the kind of incisive, in-depth, highly analytical presentation of the leader of the opposition. It is not my words, but somebody suggested to me that maybe she's hiding from the leader of the opposition. But I also say this, in all that we heard yesterday, slipped into the conversation and the comments made by the Prime Minister in relation to what I see to be a forced reshuffle, and I can come back to that. The Prime Minister spoke of BERT 3, a third IMF arrangement. And I can't, because I would probably get cut if you had a 10-second delay, repeat how people describe what that is going to do to Barbadians. But the expectation is that with all that we know in terms of borrowing, etc., the budget will have some very tough or bad news for Bajans. And as I heard somebody suggest earlier, based again on the evidence, the Prime Minister typically delegates bad news to different, she doesn't become the bearer of bad news. So somebody else will be delegated the responsibility. And so I also believe that the Prime Minister is showing fatigue in terms of domestic matters. Because if we want to be honest and fair, and I can substantiate anything I say, the Prime Minister has found herself playing musical chairs with her ministers. if you dissect ministry by ministry, you would realize that there are no stellar accomplishments. There are substantial failures. The Prime Minister came in, she talked about, I'm trying to remember the terms that were spelled. Let me first use the two that I remember. She talked about deconstructing and reconstructing. And I think that Rose did an excellent job in showing how she has deconstructed for the second time. In this case, the Ministry of Education. And I would say to you, we no longer have a Ministry of Education. We have two ministries which will carry out some of the functions of a Ministry of Education. And if you go to the Education Act, it talks about providing an integrated education and all of that, but we can come back to that later. Basically, I think the Prime Minister is a person who gets enthused and excited by ideas, maybe generated by herself, maybe an amalgam of ideas from others, and she runs with them, but there is a lack of in-depth, serious analysis. I'll give you an example. And I was reading as I was listening earlier. I went to look, and this was an article of February the 4th, 2022, News. Academic shift. This was the opening of Parliament after the last election. And you know, the president is given a throne speech to read, which is essentially the plan, an element of a, let's say, a strategic plan or the plans of the government. And it says academic shift, Education Act to be replaced. President announces major changes in education. I'll quickly read a couple lines here because some of it has fallen through the window. Barbados' education system is in for a major shakeup. Marking the first sitting of Parliament as a Republic state, President of Barbados, Her Excellency the Most Honorable Dame Sandra Mason, announced plans to replace the Education Act of 1983 during the President's address at the Lloyd Erskine Sandiford Center today. The President said that the new legislation will be more suited for modern developments in the educational system. Education will be more focused on problem solving, critical thinking, and lifelong learning, the President read. I would have assumed that that was very much a part of education from the time I was a child. And I left secondary school in 1974. I left primary school in 1966, the year we became independent. So President Dame Sandra Mason declared the Barbados Secondary School examination commonly known as 11 plus to be abolished and replaced with a middle school system, etc., etc. So that is supportive of what we've seen manifested: chaos and confusion. Unfortunately, it does not only characterize education. And if I can continue a bit more, I want to say something about the Marsha Cattle ministry and the movement. And I talked about musical chairs. Marsha Cattle, former Minister of Economic Affairs and Investment, former minister, now that she's resigned, Minister of Industry, Innovation, Science and Technology, a ministry called MIST. And it so happened, by some divine order, I was in Parliament yesterday with a number of women, including Shakwani, from the Democratic Labour Party to support our political leader and leader of the opposition. And that ministry was supposed to have been presented after lunch, the Ministry of Industry, Innovation, Science and Technology. But in my preparation, because I like to read up on these things, and as I said to you, you know, on this show, that if I could be of any help to the senators and to the leader of the opposition, I would. So I do read. I will say this, Marcia, my evaluation is, and I use the word chaos again, like the Ministry of Education, mist is a mystery. It is confusion. And so I don't know if for the second time, Minister Caddo, she's one of the people I thought was more intellectually sound of her cabinet colleagues, but from all that I hear, I don't know about her people skills, etc. And so while I observe that, I know what it takes to run a ministry. But all I can tell you, if you go and dissect the components of that ministry, if you look at BIDC, which calls itself Export Barbados now, and we can go through them, one of the critical things that they were responsible for is this whole issue of the the whole question of technology and transformation, you know, in a digital environment and so on. We know of all the chaos that we've had across government ministries with hacking and cyber, you know, attacks and all of these things. Now, so my concern is that I've heard what the former Minister Cadell said, and that may very well be an important part of her decision. But I would like to know, and I really wanted to hear, because of all that I had garnered in my intelligence gathering, I would have wanted to hear from the public officers, because they have brought the public officers, and to hear from the minister herself, what were the accomplishments of that ministry and what were the plans. Now, I'll finish by saying this. You know, as I looked in the musical chairs that happened, Kay McConney was Minister of Innovation, Science and Smart Technology, which is basically where Minister Cadell went in the second iteration as a minister. She didn't work well. It didn't work out there because her technological innovations weren't very smart. We didn't see them. So then she became Minister of Education, Technology, and Vocational Training. And what did we have? Rose talked about it. I don't have to repeat it, but I can tell you chaos again. And now she is going to where Marcia Cadell was in the first iteration, to the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Investment, which is part of the behemoth that constitutes the Prime Minister's portfolios. So all I can tell you is, in conclusion, that the Prime Minister was forced, as far as I can see, to make changes. I am not sure if, in the case of former Minister Cadell, that she jumped before she was pushed. I think that in the case of Kay McConney, she was pulled out of the ministry after, of course, demonstrating that in 2 ministries, she really had nothing much to show. And I suspect that it will be business as usual when she goes to her 3rd ministry. Confusion, chaos, a lot of long talk, many hands in the work, but the flip side of that is too many cooks spoil the broth, and we will have deconstruction with no construction.
Correct. Thank you so much, Ms. McLean. Wow, this panel is on fire tonight. Thank you all so much. We want to open up the phone lines and for persons to call in, and I'm seeing Mr. Victor Lewis is there as well, and so I'm going to get his input while I wait on the calls. But just before that, let me just say that who Mrs. Tweedy is. Mrs. Tweedy was you know, in the movie, the cartoon movie Chicken Run. And she was a chicken farmer, but she was a terrifying figure because she kept the chickens in tiny stalls. She terrorized them and eventually started killing them for meat. Right? So here again, she kept the chicken in tiny stalls. She terrorized them. She was supposed to, you know, she's a chicken farmer, right? But she was terrifying to the chickens that were under her care. And I wonder who would be Mrs. Tweedy in this whole cabinet reshuffle. Let me go to Mr. Lewis while we wait on a caller. Go ahead, Mr. Lewis. Good night. Good to see you.
Good night, and wonderful night to the loyal opposition. 2 chickens were very courageous and managed to jump ship and run.
Yes.
Woo! You know, what is happening now? What is happening in government is not surprising to me at all, because we would have talked about the bigotry, you know, the despotic behavior that we would have heard from our former leader, you know, about this despotism that exists. Clearly, her style of leadership suggests to me that, you know, as we would have said on Sunday night, when Glenn Murray was around, he spoke relative to all these fancy words, and according to Maxine just now, a lot of long talk that didn't mean nothing. So we hear a lot of fancy words, you know, about ideas, you know, the ideas form, a lot of fancy words, and at the end of the day, what? You know, when I look at that picture that was presented where we saw the Deputy Prime Minister, the Minister, the representative for St. Joseph, I think there, and two others. When you look at the body language of these individuals, just look at the body language. If you can bring that picture up and just look at the body language. What the body language say to me is not a happy camp.
Yes.
Something serious
Dave,
is
to
going
put
on.
up that picture for us,
Yeah,
Dave. And
just
I do have a caller, but
yeah.
I'll just go on for another minute and I bring the
Mhm.
caller in. Yeah.
Just look at the body language. The body language says a whole lot. How could people be in such a happy camp and people have that kind of, body language being displayed? Something is seriously wrong, and it is clearly evident now that London Bridge is falling down.
Yeah. Yes. Dave is looking for that picture for you. Let me just go to the caller and then we're gonna come right back. Caller, good night.
Hi, good night, Marcia. Good night to my loyal opposition, and good night to those that are online. Good night to
Good night.
candidate and hopeful soon MP, Miss Shaquani Hunt, and all the rest. Good night, good night, good night to all. I want to say that I fully agree with what I have heard thus far from both Miss Rose Corbin, who I delightfully enjoyed her delivery, and my sister comrade Maxine McLean thus far, the two learned gentlemen there. I and Marcia, you of course are amazing as always. Um, I can't fathom understand, and I would like to ask former Maxine McLean a question. When it comes to parliamentary procedure, is there a rule that when one wants to speak and they have a right to speak, isn't there a rule against others crossing while one is speaking? And isn't there a further rule to kind of mute the leader, the person in the chair that is leading the house, that they should be, let's just say, neutral and not seem to give the suggestion that they're being one-sided if they choose to interject?
I presume generally you're not supposed to speak. A member of the House or Senate is supposed to speak in silence. Now that in reality does not happen. However, two things. One, the leader of government business, whether in the Senate or House, should be able to control those persons, and the leader of the opposition, that person, if there are multiple persons, should be able to do the same. I think part of what you might be referring to is in the arrangement in the House now for the estimates. It is in a committee of supply, so you have a chairman of committees.
Yeah.
Again, the chairman is expected to do so, but I think what you may find, and I was not a member of the House, so I would have to scrutinize the standing orders of the House. Because we don't debate in the same way in the Senate, this particular piece of legislation, the appropriations bill. But I think it is expected that the person as a chair would be as neutral as possible. And there's something that bothers me, because they tell you you're not supposed to hear size. In other words, you're speaking through the chair to the public and to your colleague MPs or fellow senators. And so you're not supposed to be hearing and responding to them. But the reality is, if you have a barrage of speaking, noise, and so on, it disturbs your train of thought. And therefore, a decent chair, a responsible chair, and a chair who is trying to be as objective and neutral as possible will ask those people to stop. Now, if I were doing that, my way was saying is, Mr. President or Madam Chair, or whatever, Madam President, can you assist me in asking these people to be quiet, because it is disturbing me. It is preventing me from speaking sensibly, because it's disturbing my thoughts. But I think unfortunately people, I don't like what I've been seeing in the House, whether it is the acting president, the chair, the speaker. Sorry, I'm confusing the two places. The speaker, the deputy speaker, or the chairman of committees. In many ways, they come across as biased in a lot of instances. And what makes it worse is that they should appreciate that you have 28 persons sitting on the other side in theory, because you don't ever see all of them in there at any one time.
Yeah.
You have one
Right.
person. And I think that in the interest of fairness, those kind of things should be considered. But above all things, what I can say, and I take my hat off to the leader of the opposition, he handles himself well. I think because of his years as a
He does an admirable job.
highly intellectual
I would just one small thing, Mark, please.
Wait, yes. Do you have anything? Because tonight we've opened up the lines to talk about the reshuffling, etc. And you just have another minute or so. So in your last minute, what do what are your thoughts about the reshuffling, sir?
Okay. My thoughts basically are the thoughts of everybody else. I think it's a musical chairs. I think it is a way to either kind of dim the focus on what we need to be focusing on that's presently going on in the country. And as to what happened to Senator Crystal Haynes, I think it is a despotic act as to try to mimic democracy being played out even in the Senate, because everybody has a right to speak their truth. Everybody has a right to assembly. Even with me, when I was on the call-in program, I was told that I have no right to question the Attorney General by a well-known moderator. I wonder if he had lost his screws, because I have every right to question anyone with pertinent questions pertaining to our society. So yes, Marcia, I think that this turn of events is showing the instability in this current administration, and by extension, it is an instability in society, and people are beginning to slowly open their eyes. But we must retain, as the law opposition, that democracy rules over despotism. And I thank you and good night.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, caller. Dave, if you could, Mr. Lewis was asking for that picture. It's actually a video, but I think you had paused it, where Dave,
Mr. Lewis was asking for that picture.
He has his video, but one second, guys. The caller,
Mr. Lewis was asking for that picture. He has his video, but one second, guys.
Not that one.
Not this picture. The picture
The
with all
the five individuals.
Yeah, the 4 individuals.
Five. There were 5 of them.
Continue what you were saying, Mr. Lewis. Continue your thoughts while we wait on another caller. Guys, the number is 236-7000. And we would like to hear from you. We've put this time together for you.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yes, this is a picture here. Go ahead, Mr. Lewis.
When you do an analysis of that photo, right? To begin with, apart from the representative for St. Joseph, he looks like that most of the time. So you need know, yes, he looks like that most of the time. Whenever you see him, let's look at the cheeks. The cheeks gives you the impression that he is smiling. So don't get fooled by that. So when you start doing analysis of the picture, because you're investigating now, you're just not listening to words. You're looking at the body language. And the body language here is key. And that body language clearly tells me that those folks are in trouble.
Yeah, something is definitely off, and our little comedic spin on it. You have you can say who is who. I'm not saying it, but you have Miss Piggy. You have Guy Smiley. There's another character. You have what's this one here? Garfield the cat, who's a little lazy, just sleeps around, doesn't do anything. And you have Ursula. Okay. Ursula. Am I pronouncing that right, Shakwani? Ursula. And we have Ursula. So you can determine who they are. Nigel, we haven't heard anything much from you. We haven't heard in the last couple of minutes. I know you were having some technical issues. Is there anything you want to anybody said you want to contribute at this time?
Yes, but with reference to the behavior of the parliamentarians in Parliament, especially when the leader of the opposition is speaking, I think it is very disrespectful, and it demonstrates the lack of training, in my estimation, because we are taught as children whenever someone is speaking, you shut up and you listen. You do not interrupt. It is impolite to interrupt or disturb someone who is speaking. And for that level of behavior to be going on in the highest at the highest level in the governance of Barbados and in national life, for parliamentarians to be behaving like that,
Mm-hmm.
for me, constitutes hooliganism. They're behaving like hooligans in parliament, and that is not a good example for the young people. It's not a good example, okay? And clearly, I am saying that governance in Barbados is in a deep crisis, and something has to be done to rescue the art of governance from the level of hooliganism that it has degenerated to.
Yes, yes. Very, very well said. Because at the end of the day, what we need to be thinking about is, what does this mean for Barbados? Where do we go from here? What is this saying to Barbadians about the way that we are governed? But let me bring back Mr. Lewis in this conversation. Mr. Lewis, and reminding viewers that we've left this time for you to call. Okay, don't just be lazy listening. You want to listen to us? We want to hear from you too. We want to hear from you too. This is one place, Miss McLean and others, you can talk your talk and nobody gonna fire you. We're not going to do a Senator Haynes on you, all right? Um, but let me go to Mr. Lewis on that issue of Senator Haynes. Now, I know that Senator Haynes, when she got up and she spoke in the Senate, that would have pushed your cause a little bit about Joe's River. And then when you get up to hear that the Prime Minister said she was asked and she accepted, to resign, meaning that she was fired. That's what I say she was. What are your thoughts about that, and the issues that she raised that are so similar to Joe's River? What does that tell you about what's happening in the country as it relates to the overdevelopment and where the Prime Minister is heading?
Well, those are two chickens that had no fear. You know, those are two chickens that had no fear. And certainly these individuals, Senator Haynes and Caddo, those individuals are well versed. They are well trained. They're very objective. They can speak their minds because, they have a conscience. Individuals otherwise are towing the line. They are scared of the axe. Even when I did a further analysis of that photo just now, there are four individuals there, and if I think
Actually, there's supposed to be five. Dave, I sent you another picture in your WhatsApp. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Lewis.
But that was the first thing I looked at, right? Because when you started to play the video, to listen to the words, yes, but just let me look at the body language. The body language tells a whole lot. And if we divorce ourselves away from the individuals that are standing around the Prime Minister, just look at the Prime Minister. And if you got to compare that image to other images, compare that image to other images that you may recall, and you can see the fear that exists in the Prime Minister at this particular point in time. Let me say for the representative for St. Joseph, because technically speaking, it may be fair to conclude, that he is not in the departure lounge. He's taken off, because I was informed, on other occasions that, he's not around. We have now to speak to Mr. Braffett. So, he doesn't have a fear any longer of the axe, because he's on the other side of the fence. But if you have to look at the others who are looking to carry on in some portfolio, these folks are subject to an environment because of the despotic behavior. These folks now are now in fear. Now, don't look at the other one there. Now, look at the other one. Look at all of them. It speaks for itself. Forget the words, because we know how cattle was treated. We know how Senator Haynes, speaking from a clear conscience, just not looking for the term that we heard the other night, kickbacks. I have no interest in kickbacks. I'm not hand to mouth. I have an interest in this country, Barbados, and I will speak to the understanding that I'm looking forward for the interest of my country, not necessarily the interest of the Barbados Labour Party, but let me focus on the interest for my country, and the same thing goes for cattle. So I must say that at the end of it all, what has transpired here is no surprise to me. It was clearly evident from past programs that we would have had where we heard about kickbacks and all the above, that the environment wasn't one that the leader of the BLP, would entertain. So what transpired, was predicted.
Hello?
And we knew it was coming.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Lewis. Thank you for that observation. Very interesting observation there. But there's a caller on the line. Good night, caller.
Good night to all there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, what I going off on a wild speculation here. What you have in particular with the minister that resigned, Carol, essentially what she's done has distanced herself from the pinnacle of power, which is Prime Minister.
Yes. Can you hear him? Are you able to hear their caller?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, go right ahead.
Right. She has distanced herself from the Prime Minister, who've got enormous influence and power in Barbados. The question is, why has she done this? I believe, I quite like blind elder, so to speak. Let me say this up front. I'm 86 years old, so I've been around.
Another 80 somebody. Oh my Lord, Shaquan.
Pardon?
Another 80. I love the seniors. Go ahead. I'm just smiling.
Well, I would encourage to call because I call because you encourage the seniors to call.
Ah, yes.
I would do that.
Yes.
Because I retired from everything, but I decided I would give my version of what I want, interpretation.
Yes, sir.
Of what I've seen. Let me tell you, going back far, I saw politics in Barbados back as a boy, 13-year-old boy, 12-year-old boy. Saw Grantley Adams and the Queen Sparks, Steve Shedd, D.D. Garner, who was my favorite politician way back then. I saw politics in Jamaica. I used to live in Jamaica, beautiful place, from 1959 to 1962. So I saw Norman Manley during the process of the West Indian Federation and that the referendum. I was there in it, standing up very close to Norman Manley talking. I saw all of that. Saw politics in Canada, lived in Canada, saw politics in England. So I got a sort of experience. There is always in politics a struggle in political parties for power. Just make one simple point. I want somebody may pick it up. Carol, I believe, listening to her, so when I encountered her once, and that was in 2018, when the government restructured government debt and all kinds of things like that. They had a meeting where she was on the panel at the church in Welch's Road, that Welch's Ministers. I went there that night and I met her and so forth. And obviously, I was defending the position that you should not restructure. And since you should not do that to old people, those who had investments and so on. Anyway, and the impression I got they're listening to her. Here is a woman of superior intelligence. As I told you, I went around long. I listened to people and able to interpret whatnot. And I got the impression that she was an authentic lady. The question here for me, I'm going to tell you something this is now. I personally believe, I told you I went around long. I believe Mayor Mortley is overrated. I'm telling you. I'm not going to say in this particular. I would come on her on another time on the Pan-African issue. I understand recently she said that she's the daughter of Africa. What daughter of Africa? She has never demonstrated Pan-Africanism, and the party that she represented was anti-black nationalism. So Henry Ford, you don't talk evil of that anyway. Anyway, he said it, at one point he would not, because the Pan-Africanists are pushing black nationalism. He said he would. He perceived that as racism. Let's forget that part. Get him back now. I think Catherine is superior in intellect, so she can't be around me more. And what I also believe, I have no evidence that there is a power struggle in that BLP, and who is leading that struggle? Who is going to who's going to take over from Mayor Morley? It's Carol. Mayor knows that. So therefore, Carol will distance herself from Mayor. Why has she distanced herself from Mayor? We don't know if she has information about Mayor that Mayor, which it might be derogatory, or which would be bad, or whatever, good, whatever. But it seems that on principle, I'm leaving. Is it economic theory? Is it philosophy? Is it what? Is it a question of ethics? Is it a question of morality? Only Carol can answer that. And she owes it to the Barbadian public to come and specifically say, if it is policy, if it is morality, if it is ethics, if it is religion, if it is Islam, if it is Christianity, or whatever you want to put it. That the onus is now on Carol to come, because I believe in 6 months' time that we going to have a change in leadership. I tell you, I went wrong long. I can't demented yet. There's going to be a change in leadership, and Carol is going to take over that leadership. That's all I have to say.
Wow. Interesting perspective. Very interesting.
Okay.
Yes, thank you so much, sir. Thank you. A lot to think about. Thank you. Let me just bring Shaquani in this conversation here. Shaquani, you know, and I'm loving that I'm going to you. This gentleman is 86, and you're the youngest here, or 84. What do you think about what he's saying, that he's perceiving that there's a power struggle in the BLP? What are your thoughts about that?
I think there will always be a power struggle. They cannot, the leadership that is currently there cannot stay there forever. At some point in time, somebody will have to take over. They, amongst themselves, will have to decide who is the next leader or leaders to emerge. But for that to happen, you must give people wings. With the current set of people that are the ministers, they're not showing us any real rise of who will determine or who will become a leader. So we don't know who it would be, because at this point in time, they're all being overshined by the prime minister. And for that reason, they will have difficulty with giving the public of Barbados, I guess, the belief that they can do it. When we look at it, there's not a lot of them that we can say, well, we can see what they have done in their ministry. And because of that, Barbadians do not feel confident, thinking that a reshuffle will help them gain more confidence. I want to tap back quickly to the new, I don't even know what to say, the new Minister of Education, but he's not the Minister of Education. But one of the things I recognize, even though his portfolio may be, I guess, mainly diplomatic, they now announced that he might be potentially taking over for Edmund Hinkson. And I feel like that was an opportunity to put him in the limelight to speak more, because when you are in the sector where you speak on education, you are frequently in the limelight. So I feel like that was an opportunity that they used to put him there. It may not work out in the best for them. We now have to wait and see what he will do. But for me, it feels like it was purposeful. And
Yes.
that's why he was placed there with all
Mhm.
the issues currently going on with education.
Yes, thank you so much. Actually, one of the young persons who was on earlier said that they believe that he might be the one they're grooming as in the future. We don't know, but the point is that the caller felt. Let me just bring Mrs. Corbin in here, Miss Corbin, really quickly, because I have a call on that, a real sharp. What are your thoughts, Mrs. Corbin, about the caller saying that there might be a power struggle within the BLP? That's what he's perceiving. What are your thoughts about that?
Um, I believe there is, and we have seen as the leader of opposition did say that that's their business. Yesterday, my husband and I, before we heard the announcement, we were in discussion about what's happening in Barbados, our usual discussion, and we looked at the considerations, the things that could happen to cause a shift nationally and politically in terms of governance. And the last consideration, not necessarily in priority, order of priority, we said an implosion. Both of us said it at the same time. And that's what's happening. We are seeing not only cracks, but an implosion, a greater implosion is about to happen. And may speak briefly to
Yes,
the
very
Miss,
brief because I have a caller on. Okay. Yeah.
yes, about Miss Cattle. I would have taught Miss Cattle, Marcia, when she was in class 2. We shared a classroom together and we exchanged, her teacher and myself, we would exchange the teaching of subject matter. Miss Cattle was in class 2, that would be the 8 to 9 age group in 1985. Back then, we always knew that she was um, had qualities that were in which she could assert herself. At 8 and 9, she would dig her feet in and dare to challenge you on what she thought it should be or what you would have said to her. She was always that type of person to the point of being stubborn. She would stand in front of you and just not respond to you if she felt that she was being unfair, if she felt you weren't being fair, if she felt she wasn't given a chance to express herself. So she was always that type of person. And as I said, her parents, both mother and father, were sticklers for high standards and morals, very strong Christians. So I am not surprised. In fact, you would have heard me say on this forum when we were discussing the cybercrime bill that I am, at times, I was disappointed with Miss Cattle and the position she would take and the trends that I saw in terms of her conduct. She began to be a mini Kurt Humphrey and behave with a degree of arrogance. It was creeping in. And
Yes.
I always looked for the Miss Cattle, the Marsha that I knew.
You knew when
And,
she was a little girl.
and I am glad that she stood up this time around. And again, she has shown that I represent a person larger and bigger and of more importance than you, Madam
Yes.
Prime Minister.
Yes,
I am
excellent, Rose. Thank you so much. Thank you for that. We needed to hear that. Let's hear from the caller. Good night, caller.
Good night, Marcia. Good night, panel.
Welcome to the Marcia Week show. Great to have you.
Thank you. The whole cattle and the shuffling, reshuffling, I don't have a lot to say on that because I'm still trying to get over the shock. But what I do want to say is in relation to what the Prime Minister said about the new Minister of Finance. I have two questions.
Mm-hmm.
Was it said before it was announced today that he was going to be the new finance minister?
I don't understand.
Can anybody answer that question?
Ask the question again.
Wait, was it announced before? Was it said before that the new minister, I don't remember his name right now, was going to be the finance minister, or was it just made in a statement of him presenting the budget?
You mean
next Monday?
Ryan Strawn.
Right, right, Ryan Strawn. Was it announced before?
Okay, so yes, what's the next question? You have another question?
And second one, my biggest concern, our Prime Minister loves money. She has been the finance minister from 2018. To just simply give another person that role and say she's giving somebody a chance to, operate in that role doesn't sit well with me. It says to me that there's something afoot.
Mm-hmm.
My question is what?
Interesting. Okay, so hang on there, caller. Miss McLean or anybody can answer this question about Ryan Strawn.
I was trying to check my understanding and I haven't heard anything changing. Remember, the Prime Minister has a whole battery of ministers of and ministers in. And the minister of is what I would call the substantive minister. And I haven't heard her say otherwise. I was trying to Google it as the caller was speaking, but my understanding is the Prime Minister continues to be Minister of Finance and Minister Strawn is the Minister in.
The Minister of Finance.
Yeah, so I will check it, and if I see something differently, I would let you know.
Yeah, that's my understanding too, Miss McLean. So is this very similar to the Minister of Culture is the Prime Minister, and then
Minister in is
right, and so right. Do you have a minister in? In the whatever, some weird something, but yeah. Your next question. Anybody wants to tackle the next question? Did you remember the next question?
No, I don't. I think you should leave that one alone.
Okay, the second question.
Yeah, the part of what she said might be misunderstood.
Yes. Okay.
Right. So I can say, like someone said before, that a Prime Minister does not deliver bad news.
Well, that is my thinking, but not the Prime Minister doesn't. This one doesn't. Other Prime Ministers have delivered whatever news they had to deliver. But the record will show that the Prime Minister does not deliver bad news. If you go back to the many press conferences and so on, when we had the period of COVID, so
we wait for it.
Yeah.
We wait for it until then.
Yeah. Somebody. Thank you, caller. Thanks for calling. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
There's something that I was thinking. I said it's so funny. I mean, the Prime Minister has so many. The last time we checked, I think there were 7 ministries that she's minister of. If I'm not mistaken, somebody could correct me, but the last time that we did a count, I think it's probably 7 or more ministries. And I was thinking today, why she didn't reshuffle herself away, Mr. Lewis, from the planning and development. That's quite interesting. I want to ask a question. I don't know. This is usually a casual question, but Miss McLean is here, who's been on the in government for a number of years. Have we, for a prime minister to be minister, to have planning and development?
It's standard. It's standard. That typically has fallen on the prime ministers. What the prime minister has done is change the rules. The legislation has changed somewhat, and in terms of the process of approvals, etc. But that normally would fall under most prime ministers in recent years would have held that portfolio. But as I said, when you look at the legislation and the process of approvals, etc., changes were made, right? So I was looking here, Marcia. The Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, Economic Affairs and Investment, National Security, the Public Service. Then, of course, we had things like Water Authority, added on culture. So the Prime Minister's portfolio has been enlarged, it's been expanded significantly since she has become Prime Minister. And it really and truly, it's an interesting mix. But if I could, Marcia, if you don't have a call, I want to say something about Senator Crystal Haynes and what normally happens, because I've heard a lot, but I think in looking at what has transpired, I do not understand why. There was a reason given, and I call it finessing. You have to present something that is palatable, but is that really the basis for which a decision was taken? Now, in the normal scheme of things, before political parties or the government and the opposition go to parliament, whether it's the House or Senate, there are parliamentary group meetings. And the purpose of those meetings, the purpose is to make decisions on how you will debate. At that occasion, people will say, look, I have to speak from my conscience. Okay? And there are times, so you call it taking the whip off, because the notion is that there's somebody who keeps you in line and whatever, and you toe the particular line. But there are issues, say, for example, something like casino gambling, right? That would be a classic example of where MPs or senators will say, I have to speak according to my conscience. And so let's say, and so you will speak to your conscience, and if it is something that you totally cannot tolerate, you would leave. But normally there is room to do that. Now, a problem could have arisen if, for example, and remember that Senator Haynes did not vote. She absented herself after putting on the record, her position, which I think was important. She felt strongly enough the issue is sufficiently important, not only to her and to people of St. James or whatever, but to Barbados, to people who visit this country, and she felt compelled to speak her mind. Now, she absented herself after. So in essence, because let's say, for example, there was a vote and she voted against it and it was defeated, then she would have gone against her political party. She did not do that. She said, however, I cannot be silent or I cannot support. And that, as far as I know, is allowed. As formerly the government business, these were decisions where people would say, I have to speak on this. My opinion is different from most people, and you're given that freedom. So my concern was, what was so wrong to have to remove her? Because you can tell me make in place. Why did it then take out Senator Charles Morris? He's an older person. His contribution, well, I will say a little about his contributions, but I believe that he would not have been missed as much, except to be sitting in Parliament. If you listen, you would hear the kind of contributions he makes, the interventions. We were talking about listening in silence just now. I wouldn't say any more on that. So really and truly, to my mind, there was no reason why she should have been penalized. And I would have to to be told by somebody, you know, by herself that, and even then, that decision was not necessary. Let me put it that way, because for an issue of as important as that, people should have been given the leeway to speak their minds and express to the public their personal positions. As I said, the line would be drawn when it came to vote, because at the end of the day, remember, she's a government senator and they're going to Parliament to make decisions. Now, when a piece of legislation is brought, if they do what is normally done, you should know the outcome, you know, and the positions of your parliamentary group. So I really don't understand, but again, I think it's consistent with the leadership of the day.
Yes, but what I'll say is this, that as someone is pointing out, the same way that Mr. Thorne had the right to remove Trisha Watson, Miss Motley has the right,
yes,
to remove Senator Haynes. I think what we're missing here is the public we're looking on and we're saying, wow, there was somebody who stood up for the people of Barbados, stood up for whole towns, not just whole town, because it represented what she said, represented something to somebody like Mr. Lewis here, when she stood up, and it meant something to us. And to see that's all she did. And that was, you know, her freedom of expression and speech was punished. And that is what we're talking about. It's circumstances, and the fact that and I thought, listening to her, it was not. She did not demonize the party. She was very graceful in her presentation and in her. You know, I thought, and the fact that now I know she didn't even vote against it. She just wanted to bear her conscience.
And you do that.
I think for us we understand Miss Motley has the power to do it and the right to do it, but it's very alarming. It's very alarming. That is what we are saying. It seems like freedom of expression is being you know, thing. I think you were saying something, Nigel. Go ahead.
Yes, I think the dismissal, I know I said dismissal of Senator Haynes was an act of vindictiveness. She could not tolerate what is happening to Barbados. Her conscience remains alive and well. She spoke from her heart. She spoke in her conscience. She stood up for Barbados. And you mean to tell me that we have such a despotic leader who thinks that she has the right to run amok in Barbados and do as she please, that she embarrass, humiliate, and acted so vindictive against someone who spoke from conscience? And are we Barbadians going to continue to tolerate that kind of madness? Are we?
Very, very good question. I want to use this quickly just to say to everyone that on the 9th of March, we are going to be in St. Peter at GIBBS Gully. And the banner that we're calling for the saving of GIBBS Gully. I was there yesterday, did a full walkthrough of the gully, and you know, and saw the plans and everything. And we are going to be staging a barbecue there. It's going to be real fun. Barbecue there, roast breadfruit, and you're still going to have your you know, your fish and your chicken and so on. And that's going to happen on the 9th of March. It's a Sunday. We're starting though at 2 o'clock, and the reason we're starting at 2 instead of 3, because if you come at 3, you're going to miss a lot. At 2, we're starting to serve do the barbecue at 2, and then at about 2:30 or so, we're going to do a walk through in the gully. Okay, so you see, so you wear proper shoes, wear your sneakers. It's not treacherous. I've been there yesterday. Not treacherous at all. Anybody could be part of it. You know, we saw seniors at Joe's River that had their stick and everything, and they did fine. So you can come wear flat shoes. You can wear sneakers or slippers, you know, with a grip, you know, and we're going to do a walkthrough, and then at 3 o'clock we're going to start officially. All right, doing the speeches and so on and so forth. So come on out, and this is come in the name of all of these historians that are, you know, we're losing Carl Watson. We may lose Trevor Marshall, Pedro Shepherd. You know, come in the name of Senator Haynes, who stood up for these kinds of issues.
Not Pedro Shepherd,
You know,
Pedro Welch.
yes, Pedro Welch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pedro Welch, yes. If Dave could put up the picture, that if you check the Dave, can you put that picture up? Yeah. And I want to say to everybody, if you see this poster anywhere, please share it. If you see it anywhere, share it. I think that what we want to do is celebrate. We want to celebrate her courage. Do you know it took a lot of courage to do that?
Indeed.
It took a lot of courage, Mr. Lewis, to do that, because she knew the possibilities. And that's why you had Senator John Rogers, who was begging for her, because he knew what was going to happen. And as he said, that the Senate is the place to do that, to have that kind of debate, honest debate on an issue. And she did. And I've never met her, but I just still want to celebrate her. You know, I want to celebrate her. I think that yeah, I think that is very, very very important. But we are going. I'm not hearing any more calls. I thought I had to go extra time because we would need you know, for calls. But people, you know, guys, we need some more Senator Haynes to speak. Get up and to speak. Don't be afraid to call in. I wish I had heard some people from the diaspora as well. Yeah? Where are the people from the diaspora? Come on, guys. Let's get a little of the courage of Senator Haynes. A lot of us don't want to do anything. People are scared for their jobs. Why should we live in a situation like this, where people are scared of their jobs? They're scared of victimization. She was victimized. So what is that? What is that saying to Barbadians? What are Barbadians going to do? Yeah. Okay.
Marcy.
Yes, go ahead, Nigel, and we're making our rounds now. Everybody, half a minute with our final words tonight for the night. Go ahead, Nigel.
Yes. My question is, what really is the role of governance? And shouldn't the government be concentrating on the full process of social construction and nation building? Shouldn't we be concentrating on those issues rather than, I mean, yes, the economics are important, but I think there was a former prime minister who said Barbados is more than an economy, right? And I think the governance should be focusing more on social construction and nation building. And I think if we can concentrate on those areas, I think we will be able to build a stronger and a better country. And I think, and finally, I think the time has come for parliamentarians to be trained in the art of governance before they are elected or before they are assigned ministries. It is not about the party anymore. It is about a nation. It is about leading a nation forward towards true development. And I think all parliamentarians, rather than becoming ministers because they are a member of a political party, they should be trained for such office. And I think finally, whenever...
Finally.
Yes. I think the prime minister or the office of prime minister, when a person is elected to prime ministership, that person should resign the role of party leader, because too much confusion arises there. Prime minister and party leader, that should be separated.
Yes, yes. Thank you for that comment. Mrs. Corbin, half a minute. Can you close off in half a minute?
Unmuting. Back to where it started. Thank you. I'm asking for an explanation of what is now the Ministry of Educational Transformation. I am wondering also, and Maxine, I don't know if I missed it, if they had the estimates for education presented already. Who will sit in the well now to account for the expenditure, for the monies voted for, spent, and came back for 2024 to 2025? Who will give an account of that? Will Ms. McConney be brought back in to speak to those matters? This will bring us now to what Nigel persists in asking about, good governance. Or will Mr. Blackman, will this be his first assignment then, to speak to something he's in part of? What will happen? So I'm asking about accountability. Who will represent the ministry, the former Ministry of Education as we knew it? Will it become McConney? And will someone call a press conference and explain to the Barbadian public why have they troubled the heart of our nation? Education, not roads, not infrastructure. Why have they troubled education, disbanded it, and not come to the people to explain of that intention? It is not decent.
Yes.
Tell us what is the Ministry of Transformation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let me go to Shakwani. Shakwani, what are your final thoughts this evening?
Thank you very much again, Marcia. I was on the Ministry of Education's page on Instagram, and I was looking over some of the things that they posted. And one of those photos was a photo of the current minister. Well, we don't know what his real position is at this time is, Mr. Blackman. And one of the things he put at his caption, because he collaborated with them, was that it may take him a couple days or a day or a month to get his head like wrapped around the situation for that industry. And to me, that is the beginning of a problem. If you are identified as a person who can get the situation with education back on track, why do you now need to get updated on what is going on with it? You should already come in knowing what the problems are, identify them, and have solutions starting from day one, because they selected you to replace a person who already was experiencing difficulty. So if you now have to spend time to get up to date with the issues and come up with solutions, you are in a worse position.
Yeah,
so my
I understand.
is
Yeah.
that they didn't really think through this switch around, or he just happened to be pulled out on a whim and placed there. Because if that is the case, we have a bigger problem on our hand. We have issues that are urgent and needs addressing right away, and we do not have time for him to be caught up, because he needed to have selected to be in a position to deal with it right away. So if he cannot handle it, we need to put somebody else that would be able to get everything started out as soon as possible.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Shakwani. And let me go to Mr. Lewis. Any thoughts as we close, sir?
Yes, there was a show sometime back, maybe I think the section we had in George River. And on the morning of that show, a lady called me and she said, Mr. Lewis, you're going to George River today. I want you to be careful when you go there. My phone just rang and I answered, You know, I can hear that the lady is a older lady. She said, "My name is Trotty." You know, on the evening of that show, she called again and says, "Mr. Lewis, are you all right?" And I was a kind of shock with the first call in the morning, then the call the night. The person called, "Be careful." Called back the evening and said, "You know, Mr. Lewis, well, you know, I listened to the show and it's nice to know that everything went fine and that you're back home." Last week, that lady came to me when I was at Holtham.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the first time I saw her. 75 years old. She said her name is Trotty. So when I listened to the 86-year-old tonight, knowing very well that there's a great sector of our society where wisdom prevails,
Yes.
where wisdom prevails, it is a joy to know that. I mean, to some extent, I was concerned that here's a 75-year-old calling my house to question, you know, Victor, be careful of this gentleman, you know, and then to call back to find out if I'm okay, then to meet me before I got out of the vehicle. Good on Sunday, this lady came and hugged me. This is the person, Trotty, 75 years old. And to listen to the 86 years old saying that there's something in cattle, that he saw it. I would like to think that there will be a challenge sometime along the road between Chad Blackman and Cattle as far as their intellectual potential is concerned and where they are focusing. But wisdom will prevail. The long talk is coming to an end.
Yes. Wow. Excellent. Excellent. You know, just before Miss McLean bring the curtain down for us this evening, I want to say to the viewers that when we arrived at Whole Town to have that wonderful roadside parliament, there was that's a woman. She's 75 years old, and as far as I remember, she was there before we got there, and we are the organizers, you know. And she was there before we got there, and she told us she took a bus. I think she took two buses actually to get to Whole Town. She's 75.
Yes.
And she was helping us to move chairs. I kept telling her, "Don't, you can't lift that up." She said, "Let me try. If I can't, I'm not going to put on, you know." And I want to just big up the seniors. You don't know what you're doing to me. It's giving me life, I tell you. To see the seniors, you know, and I just want to, if you're listening, she tells me she misses no show. And when she got home, you know, she took the bus, she got home, and then she called me.
Wow.
To make sure that I got home.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remembered that as you were saying, man, to the seniors, over to Miss McLean. I had to put that in.
Very quickly, all the Barbadians are always typically on time. If they're going to be an hour early, they prefer to be an hour early than 10 minutes late. Shakwani, newsflash. The unfortunate reality is, and this is why I cannot understand, well, no, I understand why I would say that a reshuffle at this time is not planned. It was forced. A reshuffle will create disruption. And it isn't only the minister. He will need more than a month. I hear him talking. He will need more than a month because I think he has a lot to learn. But you're breaking the ministry in pieces, into two pieces. So what's going to have to happen? They got to decide which piece goes where and all of that. But I wouldn't. Nigel, I am happy to say that this document here, report of the Parliamentary Reform Commission, I got my copy today. And I don't think they can kill me for this. I don't know what they plan to do. Training of parliamentarians is a recommendation inside of there, right? I think you mentioned the issue of need to be trained in the art of governance and so on. And this was one of the things that we put forward as a recommendation. Rose, you will not hear anything on education because it was not included in the list of the ministries for the second year running to be considered. And the ministry last year, they had health, because between the Ministry of Health and education, they're the two largest elements, you know, the two ministries that get the single largest pieces of the budget. But I want to say, in relation to this whole thing, we talked about the reshuffle, but you know what the Prime Minister stuck in there? BERT 3. let me count. BERT 3, 1, 2, 3. And beyond my comment about her being afraid of taking on the leader, the opposition, I believe that what is coming is going to be tough, and it's going to be a lot of bad news. She will not be the bearer of bad news. I happened to run into the governor of the central bank yesterday coming down the steps of Parliament. I guess he had a meeting with the Prime Minister, and this is probably part of the discussion about BERT 3. That is what Barbadians have to look out for. There's been a lot of borrowing, and they're going to have to service those debts. I believe it's going to cost over $1 billion a year to service the foreign debt. The economists will help us to understand. But Bajans, tighten your belt, put on your seatbelts, because we have to tighten our belts and let us look forward. Well, we got to hear what's happening. So we are, this has created a whole set of uncertainty, adding to the additional problems. But my focus is, what will that third iteration of the IMF arrangements mean for us?
Yes. Thank you so much, Ms. McLean. Thank you to our panel. Thank you to those who started out with us this evening. We had Don Leacock and Senator Ryan Walters. There was Jan Satter, who is from that community, Brighton, St. Michael.
Brighton.
And
Yes.
having some real challenges there. Thank you for coming on. Thank you, Shaquani. Thank you, Rose Corbin. Thank you, Nigel. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Thank you, Maxine McLean. I'm hoping I'm not forgetting anybody. Our A team. This is our A team. Thank you so much, everybody, for being part of it. All of you viewers, thank you for joining in. And we are going, please make preparations to be at GIBBS Gully Roadside Parliament, Sunday, March 9th. It's 2 p.m. We're preserving our land and heritage, and it is about saving GIBBS Gully. You need to be there early for the barbecue. Barbecue is at 2 o'clock, and then we're going to have 3 o'clock. We start with our speeches, okay? Thank you so very much, and God bless you. I think Dave has something that he wants to play on the way out. Go ahead, Dave.
Has happened among us, about which it is difficult to speak, but about which it is impossible to remain silent. Today I'm breaking in silence. But that's what I say for the record. I was patient, but I have children and a grandchild that will have to live in this country. And my voice will be heard, and my voice will be read, will be raised. And those who are convincing Mayor Motley that she can just ride roughshod, that there are those of us in Barbados who are going to stand up and that she cannot ride roughshod over us, because the record has to be straight. Now, I don't have to be forming any institutions or other things to be speaking in the manner in which they feel it should speak in this country. I'm speaking to you now in the name of my children and my grandchild. I want to live in a country where there's freedom of expression. I want to live in a country where no despot can feel that they should hold the destiny of my children and my grandchild in their hands. And that Mayor Motley is a menace. She's a menace because she's a despot. She's a menace because she's a despot, believes that she has a right to be a despot. She would try to be a despot with me. Motley unilaterally, with the support again of a small group, decided that the will of the majority should not prevail. There is nobody in Barbados politics, and certainly in the Labour Party politics, who has expressed themselves more openly and freely. Not Motley. You seem not to recall that Mayor Motley once went to a national consultation, and without the approval of the party, committed the Barbados Labour Party to a policy that we were staggered with, that we were going to commit ourselves to distributing condoms in prison. I don't think you quite appreciate what peril that caused the Barbados Labour Party. Mayor Motley is listening to Peter Wickham, and that is going to be spoken about in some detail too, because of a tale of two poles. Like the people of Barbados, based upon the Wickham poll, don't want the party to be the government, but that they want her to be Prime Minister of Barbados. That is the most dangerous doctrine. And that the media itself, we believe, has to sit down and discuss, are we going to allow something like this to stand in Barbados? having given my life to the Labour Party, that I saw it being reduced. It has lost its way, and I had a duty to say so. It has lost its soul. And it said then that as far as I was concerned, the Barbados Party had become no more than the institutional plaything of a megalomaniac. And today go further, because all that has happened has come from that point of view. But sadly, the Barbados Party is now allowing itself to become no more than a cushion to bear the imprint of the object that is sitting upon it. And I use the word object rather than the preferred three-letter word that we use. And I really am not going to keep quiet about it anymore. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh my lordy. Well, good night. Good night. This is where we say
Good
good night.
night.
Yeah,
Good night.
let's sum it up. Have a good night, everybody. Bye bye.
Yes,
See you on
bye-bye.
Friday.
Everybody.